My psycho fiance gambled away my grandmother's engagement ring that my mom gave to him so that he could propose to me. Things were so bad that he actually lost the ring playing poker with his friends and then had to spend weeks gambling with his friends just to get the ring back. And now that the truth has finally come out and the lies have stopped, I'm seriously reconsidering everything because this feels like a huge betrayal of trust and I just simply don't know what to do. Here's how it all went down. So I've been with my boyfriend, now fiance, for about 3 years now. He's wonderful in a lot of ways. He's kind, attentive, he makes me laugh, and we've been talking about marriage seriously, and I knew a proposal was coming because my mom accidentally let it slip that he asked her about my grandmother's ring. It's a family heirloom, a delicate diamond band that has been passed down for 3 generations, and my mom gave it to him to hold on to until he proposed. Well, fast forward to last weekend in July, and he goes out with his buddies for poker night, which is nothing unusual, but he came home late one night and I noticed something shiny in his pocket when he threw his jeans in the hamper. Well, I pulled it out, and to my absolute shock, it was my grandmother's ring. I confronted him right then and there, and he admitted he's been bringing it to poker nights for good luck. He said it started as a joke. I mean, his friends called it the engagement talisman, but then he swore it actually helped him win, and he promised he never bet it, but just instead kept it in his pocket. We were able to work it out over a few weeks, and he promised he wouldn't do it again. He even stopped going to poker weekly, and now only goes like once a month. About a month or so after this, he finally proposed with my grandmother's ring, and I said yes. Then came the engagement party. We're celebrating everything is perfect. That is, until one of his friends makes a joke about how my fiance almost had to propose with a Cracker Jack ring. When I heard this, I froze. And when I pressed him later, my fiance finally admitted that months ago, he actually did gamble the ring and lost it. And he only got it back after weeks of playing until he finally won it back. So not only did he risk my grandmother's heirloom, but he lied to me when I confronted him. He let me believe that we had worked through it when really, he was hiding the worst part of the story the entire time. Now I feel like the proposal itself is tainted because all I can think about is how that ring was sitting on someone else's poker table. Right now, I've gone to stay with my mom for a bit, and I gave her the ring back because I don't feel comfortable wearing it anymore. And I told my fiance that if he still wants to marry me, he needs to propose again with a different ring or else it's over. He says I'm being dramatic and ruining a good thing over one mistake. But I can't shake this feeling that this was more than just a mistake. It was reckless, disrespectful, and very dishonest. So am I overreacting by making him get a different ring? Or is this a fair boundary after what he did? What should I do? Okay, I don't even know what to say. This is crazy to me. This actually is insane. Like, this guy gambled away your grandmother's ring, you know, the family heirloom he was supposed to propose with, and then had to spend several weeks just to win the ring back. Like, holy crap, is that not a big red flag? Like, there's just no good excuse for that. Like, this guy's reckless. And the thing is, he didn't just gamble it, he lost the ring, and he had to earn it back by gambling more stuff. And I don't know about you, but that's like something I would never be able to ignore. Like, I really feel like that's a distinct look into your future, and that is crazy to me. It's also deeply upsetting and very disappointing because the barrier of entry here is really easy. Don't gamble the family heirloom that's going to be on your wife's finger. Like, what are we talking about right now? Your fiance sucks so much. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be calling off everything, dude. I would be pumping the brakes and reconsidering this entire situation because I'm serious. What your fiance did is messed up and there is no good excuse for it, no matter what he says or whatever kind of excuse he comes up with. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not wanting our friend to ever come back to our house after he quite literally ate everything that we owned after we had him watch our house while we went on vacation? Because right now my husband's saying that I'm overreacting, but I'm honestly still pissed off about this. And I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, so my husband and I live abroad. And earlier this year, a mutual acquaintance of ours, who we will call Kevin for the sake of the story, reached out saying that he'd been scammed with an apartment rental and now had nowhere to stay. At first we only offered a weekend, but he was polite, he was helping around the house, and he seemed really grateful. So we ended up letting him stay the full 20 days that he asked for. Well, during that time, some things really just rubbed us the wrong way. He never bought groceries, and multiple times he pretended he was going to pay, but instead just forgot his wallet. Or he claimed he could only use Apple Pay, which is not accepted at our local supermarket. He would also eat way more than his fair share. Like once my husband and I shared half a pizza, and he just literally ate the entire other half without contributing to paying for it. But even still, we feel bad for him, so we just kind of let it go. We stayed stayed friendly, and a few months later, we were planning a 17-day trip. Since he was struggling with rent, we offered him to stay at our place in exchange for taking care of our dog. I even wrote a Google document with instructions for the house, the dog care, gym access, etc. I also told him that he could eat anything that was going to expire. Stuff like fruit or vegetables or yogurt, stuff like that. Well, when we came back, absolutely everything was gone. And I mean everything. The entire fridge, the freezer, the pantry. He finished off 2 jars of jam, a jar of peanut butter, a giant Costco bottle of oil, the condiments, the rice, any snacks, any of the cheese that we had. Even my husband's supplements were all gone. He completely destroyed a ceramic pan. He consumed things that usually last like 6 months in just 2 weeks. And I honestly suspect he might have just taken stuff with him because it's insane how much was missing. Now, the only time I confronted him about this is to ask him to replace the pan, which he even mocked me about when I said this. He said to me, "It's just a pan. Why are you making a big deal out of this?" And truly, in that moment, I felt deeply disrespected. Now he keeps texting me, acting like nothing happened, and somehow wants to hang out. But I told my husband I don't want him in our home ever again. My husband says I'm being too harsh, and if he wants to stay friends, that is his choice. But I feel completely taken advantage of and disrespected. So am I the jerk for not wanting to see this guy ever again and refusing to let him come back into our house? Because right now I'm very, very pissed off. Dude, if I trusted someone with like watching my house while I was gone and they just completely slammed through like 6 months worth of food and pretty much everything, I would probably tell them, "Look, I can't be your friend anymore. This is some crazy behavior. I'm sorry, but this is just not working." Or even just ghost them entirely. Like, this is so dumb. Like, this guy even took like the husband's like protein supplements and like other stuff like that. Like, I'm surprised he didn't take the light bulbs out of the ceiling as well. Like, dude, what's going on right now? And no, it's not just a ceramic pan. It's your ceramic pan that this guy literally destroyed. So no, you're not the jerk because this friend absolutely sucks. Am I the jerk for calling in a welfare check on my husband after he didn't respond to me for the weekend while I was on a work trip? Because right now he's saying that I blew things completely out of proportion and I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I was out of town for a planned work trip over the weekend, which is something I do on a quarterly basis for my job. And my husband stayed home with our son, who's 4 years old, for a boys' weekend. They dropped me off at the airport on Friday evening and I checked in with them when I arrived to say goodnight and to let them know that all was well. On Saturday, I sent my husband a good morning text and I asked how our son was doing because sometimes he struggles with sleeping. But here's the thing that really started all the problems of this post in the first place. My husband didn't respond. So I went to the planned work events and I sent another message a couple of hours later, and when I still didn't get a response, I called him up, but still I got nothing. I sent a few more messages throughout the day and even texted his brother to check on them, but his brother also said that he did not respond to him either. Well, by that evening, I was pretty concerned as I still had not heard anything. So I ended up calling the hospital to see if anything had happened and even checked to see if there was any like accident reports. I tried contacting the neighbor I have a number to, but they were completely unavailable. So I decided to call the cops to do a welfare check. When the police showed up, my husband and son were at home and he said he was not answering his phone because they were watching TV and playing games all day. But I just don't see how he couldn't even send like one text message the entire day just to let me know that things were good. He says I blew this completely out of proportion and should have waited until bedtime as he was going to have my son call me then anyways. And for reference, my husband is against using location tracking apps, so there was no way for me to know where he was and if everything was okay unless he told me. The police chalked it up to a misunderstanding, so legally nothing more will be done, but my husband's upset with me for undermining his parenting abilities. And now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk for having a welfare check called on him because I'm honestly not sure if I made a mistake. Okay, honestly, with all things considered, my gut instinct is to say, whoa, wait a second, why are you calling the cops? Like, your husband's an adult, he can take care of himself, etc. But the fact that there's a 4-year-old son involved, like, oh yeah, no, you better respond to that text message. So to that extent, I don't think you're the jerk at all. I think this was like the last ditch effort to be like, okay, something's going wrong. He's not responding to anything I'm saying. I've got to get in contact somehow, so I'm calling the cops. I completely understand where you're coming from, and I don't think you overreacted. And if anything, this falls on your husband's shoulders because he easily could have messaged you back, but he chose not to. Am I the jerk for not installing a camera to help our neighbors catch their supposed stalker after they've gone on these delusional rants about someone messing with her property? Because right now, we really just don't want to deal with this lady, and yet she's still said that we're what's wrong with this world and that she's embarrassed for us and our lack of consideration. And right now, we're not sure if we're making a mistake by shutting her down, and we just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. So my fiance and I live in this apartment and condo community, and we have a neighbor who we have at times wondered about her mental health and stability. On multiple occasions, we have heard her outside on her balcony, which is across from ours, yelling at someone. She has called this person a loser, a creep, threatened to call the police, police, and every time we look outside, there's nobody there. It happens at all hours of the evening and at night, and our units are situated so that if we look out of our balcony door, we can see straight over to hers. We have been in our living room watching TV when she started yelling and look over to see that absolutely nothing abnormal was going on. She finally stopped me one day and told me that she has a stalker who climbs up on her second-story balcony. She claims that this person disconnects both of her security cameras and even her Wi-Fi prior to climbing up there, and she says that he does not attempt to contact her or enter her property. I then asked her what he looks like and if she has any idea who he is, and she said she has actually never seen him, but she knows that he is there. She then asked if we would be willing to put a camera up on our balcony, pointing in the direction of hers to see if we can catch anything. Well, I told her I would speak with my fiancé, but I did say that I just don't think this would be something he would be comfortable with. Well, fast forward a few months and she never really mentioned it again until the other night when she stopped my fiancé while he was walking the dog just to ask him why we wouldn't put a camera up for her. I heard them start going back and forth and stepped outside to see what was going on. She basically thought that we were terrible for not looking out for her and could not believe that we would not do anything to help her out. We then asked her if she had spoken about this to like the homeowners association or even her property manager about this since she does rent the unit, and she admitted that she had not. We then tried to calmly explain to her that we were not comfortable with essentially setting up surveillance on her property and taking time out of every day to send her any footage, and that if she really feels threatened, she needs to speak with someone who can actually do something about it. The conversation then ended with her telling us that we are what's wrong with the world and that she's embarrassed for us and our lack of consideration for others. So are we the jerks for admittedly not believing this stalker even exists in the first place and not putting up a camera? Because right now I really just don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, it seems like this woman is paranoid and she is clearly delusional because this just doesn't make any sense. Like, come on, man. She's talking about someone climbing up to her balcony and unplugging her cameras, but it's like, if that really was the case, then wouldn't the cameras pick that up? Like, come on. Like, this lady's clearly got some problems going on, and I think not feeding into that is probably the best thing for you. But for me, there's also like a twisted side of this where I'm like, oh yeah, I think I might just put up a camera secretly anyways, because the way she's acting is kind of crazy, and I think in my opinion, you might need some evidence if she like flies off the handle, because she is acting a little bit too weird in my opinion. So no, you're not the jerk, but like it wouldn't be bad to consider that just to watch her, because this lady's acting crazy and really weird, and I just would not trust her for a second. Am I overreacting for being mad at my boyfriend after he tested me by hiding my car keys? Here's what he did. Okay, so last night my boyfriend thought it would be funny to test how I would react if I couldn't find my car keys. I was heading out to grab some food and he secretly hid them behind the couch. I then ended up tearing up the entire apartment for like 20 minutes and was even on the verge of crying because I thought I lost them at the grocery store earlier. He finally laughed and said, "Chill, it was just a prank. Now you know that you should be more organized." And when he said this, I was honestly furious. I told him that's not funny, it's stressful, and he really did cross a line. But he thinks I'm overreacting and said, "Oh, it's not that deep." So seriously, I need to know, am I overreacting here? Because this still has me incredibly pissed off. Okay, I gotta be honest with you, if anybody did that to me, I'd be super pissed off. Like, this guy basically baited you and it was like, "Oh, I can't wait to watch you freak out because you can't find your stuff." And I'm willing to bet he's probably seen you get upset in this fashion before, and so he did it just to try and like take a jab at you. He did this because he wanted to make fun of you and he wanted you to feel bad. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of a red flag in my opinion. Like, sure, maybe it's not that deep, but like it was to you because it really made you upset. But even with that in mind, I don't think you overreacted, and I think you're completely within your rights to be pissed off at this guy because what he did really was a jerk move and you did not deserve that. My older sister is broke, depressed, jobless, and refuses to help out, especially while I'm shouldering the burden of handling my father's financial mess after he suddenly passed away not too long ago. And now after all that's been said and done, I'm starting to wonder how to deal with my sister in the first place because her attitude is incredibly entitled. Here's what's going on. I want to start off by saying that I honestly just don't know what to do anymore. I'm in my late 20s and I'm a male and I am the younger sibling, but I've got to be honest, I'm the one holding everything together while my sister, who's in her late 30s, completely refuses to step up. Here's the situation I'm currently in. She lost her job 18 months ago, and ever since then, she's fallen into depression. She's racked up debt and absolutely refuses to even try to look for a job or get professional help. It is just constant emotional shutdowns, excuses, and victim mode. Then, 10 months ago, our dad died unexpectedly, and we found out he had gambled away nearly €250,000. On top of that, he left behind about 70,000 euros in debt, and the only assets left are like 2 properties worth like roughly 400,000 euros combined. Now, I've been handling almost everything with our stepmother. The paperwork, the debts, calls with the banks, the taxes, the lawyers, literally everything. And yes, I also work full time. Most of my income is currently going straight straight towards covering the outstanding debt just to try and keep things from falling apart entirely. Now, one of the two properties is a mess. Years ago, when he was drunk, my dad literally burned all the blueprints for the house. It was then rented out to squatters and neglectful tenants who destroyed the place. He did finally get them out about 6 months ago, but now the house needs major work to even be sellable. Not to mention that it's almost 250 kilometers away from where we live. And just take a wild guess as to how much my sister has helped out so far, because I'll tell you, she's done absolutely nothing. Zero. Not a single phone call or even a single visit. Absolutely nothing. Now, our stepmother wants to sell the house, understandably so, below market value, just to finally cover some debts and be done with it. But my sister refuses to agree because it's just not enough money, according to her, despite offering no solution, no help, or any kind of plan. And what does she talk about constantly, you might be asking? She says that she needs to go on vacation, that she deserves to finally get away because she's so mentally drained. She can't even go because of her dog and no one wants to take him. And by the way, she has 2 dogs. The first one has lived with our 80-year-old grandparents for years now because she couldn't take care of him. And then 4 years ago, she rescued a second dog from a kill shelter while already overwhelmed. And now she's complaining that she can't go on vacation because no one will take the dog. And you know what? Honestly, I just don't understand how someone could be so self-centered. I work full-time, I'm managing the estate, I'm financially bailing us out, I'm handling the house, the paperwork, the inheritance, all while she just wallows in self-pity and waits for others to fix her life. She says she knows I'm doing everything and that she's sorry, but there's been zero change, no effort at all, just more crying about how everybody gets a break except for her. But I've told her very clearly, there will be no vacation until she gets some real help. Therapy, medication, a job, a plan, something. She's got to have something going on. Vacation is not the starting point, it's the goal. If she finally steps up and takes part in fixing this mess and shows that she's taking her life seriously, then I would even consider helping her with her dog. But right now, I'm running on fumes. I'm drowning in responsibilities I didn't ask for, and I'm starting to resent her for how selfish and passive she's being, even though I know that she's struggling mentally. So has anyone ever dealt with a sibling like this before? Someone who just collapses under life and expects others to carry everything for them? How do you help someone like that without destroying yourself in the process? What should I do? Okay, honestly, first and foremost, I think the fact that your sister's trying to act like, oh yeah, I deserve a vacation, all while you're trying to like settle any kind of debt resolving your dad and like get his affairs in order that should have been figured out a long time ago, like that is all you need to know about the kind of person your older sister is, because that is crazy to me. Never mind the fact that she hasn't had a job in 18 months, but seriously, she is missing the point here. Your dad has passed away and it's time to step up and help out, not sit there and be like, man, what about me? I would love to go on vacation, but no one wants to take my dogs. And it's like, dude, talk about having your priorities messed up. You're not even doing anything to help out the situation, and you're literally already lazy about it. So yeah, this whole scenario is really dumb in my opinion. I think this is just so stupid, and I think the way your sister's acting is honestly the most telling sign you can ever have in your life that she just doesn't care. And if I was in your shoes, that would really inform how I treat her in the future, because this is just completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for refusing to let my mom turn my guest room into her own permanent crash pad whenever she visits? Because at this point, she's treating my house like her own space that she can move into without having to compensate for anything that I have going on, completely disrespecting my space and ignoring any of my requests. And at this point, I'm not sure what to do because I'm being called selfish and saying that I'm abandoning her, and it's putting me in a spot that makes me feel really bad and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so I bought my first home last year. It's just a small 2-bedroom house, and the second room is my office and guest room. Now, my mom lives about an hour away, and ever since I bought the house, she's been staying over more often. At first, once in a while, and then every other weekend, and now sometimes during the work week too. Last week, she showed up with a suitcase and asked if she could just keep some clothes here permanently since she's here so much. But then she said that she was thinking of spending half the week at my house so that she just didn't have to commute as much. Well, when she said this, I told her no. I said, look, I love you, but I don't want a semi-permanent roommate. And my space is my space. But when I said that, she got really upset and accused me of abandoning her and forgetting everything that she sacrificed just to raise me. And now, because of this, my aunt is texting me about how selfish I'm being, but I just don't think buying a house automatically means that my mom gets to partially move in. So am I the jerk for refusing? Because this honestly is really frustrating and I just don't know what to do. No, this is a weird request from your mom. I can understand her trying to be like, hey, I just don't want to commute as much and like maybe I could stay there more often. But if she really thinks she's going to stay there without any kind of like compensation of some kind, then she's crazy in my opinion. And she's just being super entitled. Like think about it for a second. She's trying to be like, oh, I'll spend half the week here. That way I don't have to commute as much. And I don't know if this is her way of like weaseling her way into your house and moving in, but it definitely seems like it. And that's just not fair. Like if she's going to be staying there so much, then like the first thought in my head is like, okay, you got to start paying for some of the bills of the house or like paying rent of some kind because this is not going to happen otherwise. Like that's what I would do if I was at least willing to do this. But also the original poster is well within the rights to be like, no, you can't stay here. I don't want a semi-permanent roommate. That's not okay. And I need my space. It also sounds like this house is very small. So it's like, yeah, I don't have room for this kind of stuff. So no, you're not the jerk for refusing. I think your mom is being super entitled, especially with her getting upset and then dragging her sister into this to try and be like, oh wow, you're being selfish. Because that kind of attitude is really weird and that would only make me more resistant to allowing them anywhere near my house ever again. My entitled mom takes my baby away from me and refuses to give her back until I clean my room. And this is a frustrating trend that keeps happening and I honestly can't stand it. Here's what happened. Now this was in 2020 and despite me still learning about myself because I was growing as a new parent, my mother always wanted my room spotless. Now I have ADHD and cleaning related PTSD that my mother absolutely caused. And the dirtiest my room gets is maybe some empty packages and clothes on the floor because once my room begins to bother me, I will clean it. I also hate being told what to do and will do the opposite just to spite the authority figures. Now, my mother had bugged me about my room for several days at this point, and being honest, it was not as bad as she painted it to be. It was in no way a tripping hazard or a biohazard for my child. Yes, I was depressed snacking for the first 6 months of my daughter's life, but I purposefully put the trash can next to my bed, so I had no reason not to throw away my trash. My room is very small, crowded with furniture, leaving me about 2.5 feet of walking room from the door to the nightstands. I have a crib and a wardrobe, as well as my queen-size bed in the small 10 by 15 foot room, so hardly enough space to really raise a child, but you know what? I do my best. The newborn stage was the hardest stage for me, as I was an insomniac and I never slept well. I found sleeping with my daughter on my chest brought me enough peace so I could sleep peacefully, despite waking up in pain due to how I was sleeping. Ever since my daughter was born, I slept unmoving when she was next to me, and it caused me some issues. This would mean I would fall asleep with my head on my arm, and I would wake up to pins and needles, and a mark on my arm from her laying there. So I had just fed my daughter and needed a morning nap as I was exhausted, and I was still having trouble sleeping at night. I then hear the lock unlocking from my door, and I just ignore it as I fell asleep, thinking that I would be left alone since my daughter and I were having a nice nap together. As I'm laying there resting my eyes, I feel my daughter being pulled away from my arms as I had my hands on her back and her head, with my sheets well below her waist, so it was obvious I was holding her. Thinking my mother had just walked in from concern for my daughter's safety, I say out loud, "Don't worry, I'm not asleep right now," as she did not know how my sleeping habits had changed since my daughter's birth. She told me to get my butt up and to start cleaning right now. She flipped the switch on the light in my dimly lit room, causing me to wince. I gently try to fight back as not to injure my newborn baby, but my mother started pulling my daughter towards her a little bit harder, so I just let go of my little daughter before she got hurt. I told her, "You should know after 19 years, I don't respond to being told what to do. Leave my kid alone and get out of my room." It's a rule throughout the house that nobody is allowed in my room due to this very problem, but my mother always barges in my room using her stupid keys. She takes my kid and says, "You can have her back once you clean this room." I wanted to call her a bunch of different names and tell her that my child is not a bargaining chip, but I bit my tongue and I didn't respond as she just walked out the door. I sat on my bed for 20 minutes trying to figure out what just happened before going to grab my kid, refusing to clean up the small pile of clothes in the corner of my room. I just lied to her and said that I cleaned everything up. And while she has walked in on me during personal time or when I'm just trying to relax, this incident is by far the worst experience I've had. I get why she needed a key to my door, especially at the time with me always being tired during the day, but my daughter never missed a bottle and was never neglected. If she was awake, I was awake. I was playing with her or spending time with her or just taking care of her. If I fell asleep, she was put down for a nap and she would wake me up when something was wrong. My mother never helped me in any way, shape, or form, but I don't get why she feels so entitled to my daughter. Thankfully, in the future, with my upcoming stay in babysitting, I'll be leaving soon to find another place to live. So hopefully until then, incidents like this don't happen ever again. I think it's super inappropriate for the mom to be acting this way towards her daughter. Like legitimately, you can't just go in there and take her daughter and say, oh, you'll get your baby back once you clean up this room. Like that is not how this works. That is legitimately not your child and you can't just do that. That's like really bad in my opinion. This also begs the question of what kind of environment is this lady in? She clearly is a single mom, or at least it sounds like it, and it sounds like she's living with her mother and that things are definitely not going well right now. But it does sound like there's some kind of silver lining here, because the original poster went on to say that they will eventually be able to move out because of the job that they have. But at the moment, they are just kind of stuck in their mom's house. So hopefully the original poster is able to move out of their mom's house, because their mom sounds incredibly toxic, and the way she's acting despite the extenuating circumstances is, in my opinion, highly inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. An entitled Karen gives me an attitude, as I'm just trying to direct her where to go in the hospital I work at. But after she gets lost, she comes back to my desk, only for her and her son to miss their appointment, simply because she didn't know how to listen. So on my campus, outpatient imaging like x-rays, CT scans, and MRIs are done in a building separate from the main hospital. Very occasionally, the inpatient imaging department will take some patients when there are simply too many appointments for the outpatient center to handle. They have a very tiny registration office and waiting room for when that does happen. However, it is important to know that they only open it when they are expecting outpatient appointments. Otherwise, they just keep it closed. Today, this lady and her very young child came in and walked up to my desk. She let me know they were here for his imaging appointment and wanted to know where they needed to go. I looked them up and I saw that they were going to the outpatient imaging building. I pointed it in the directions and I began to speak, and she almost immediately cut me off. No, we're going to this one. And she's referring to the one that's closed down. I was confused, but I let her know that the patient chart was showing me that she would be going to the outpatient building. She huffed and let me know that I was apparently incorrect and that she knew that she was going to the tiny registration room since she went there last time. The problem is, since inpatient imaging was not expecting any outpatient appointments today, that little room is closed and there would be no one there to redirect her. So I just repeated myself one more time and let her know that her chart said that she would be going to the other building. But when she interrupted me again, I just stopped trying and I said, you know what? Okay. She had a little speech about how she was already late, which was only about by 5 minutes. But I just kept saying, okay, until she walked off in the wrong direction. In all honesty, I'm not sure how much time had passed before this next part happened, but it was probably at least 30 minutes to an hour. I heard a few sets of footsteps down the hall, and I recognized this lady's voice immediately. She was complaining to someone else about how our hospital was ridiculous, and it was unacceptable that she was waiting for so long before someone came to get her. I didn't even want to turn around to look at her. It turns out she walked herself and her child to the closed registration waiting area. She waited outside the locked doors for however many minutes and just began wandering the halls until a nurse finally found her. And of course, this innocent nurse didn't know how I already tried to tell her where to go, so she brought her back to me and said to this lady, oh, this person can help you. Before the lady could say anything, I said, yep, like I said, your appointment was at the outpatient building right out there. We then had a brief conversation that went something like this. This lady then looked at me and said, well, now we're really late. I said to her, yes, unfortunately, it looks like you've missed your appointment time. As a side note, there are usually 2 times: arrival time so you can fill out paperwork, and table time, which is the time you need to be in your gown and on the table. In our hospital, once you miss your table time, they will no longer take you and you need to reschedule. This entitled Karen then said, so will they still see him? But I responded with some bad news. I said, unfortunately, no, you will need to reschedule. She then says, well, I need you to call them and tell them that I did show up. I was just lost. And I'm pretty sure she said this just so she didn't get billed for missing the appointment. But I told her that I unfortunately could not do that for her. She then practically demanded that I make her a new appointment. But unfortunately, that's not what I do at this desk. And so instead, I gave her the phone number that she can call to set up another appointment. And when I said that, she definitely was not happy. She said, wait, are you serious? What do you even mean? Can't you do it? I said, nope, I make sure everyone has a mask and I direct people to their appointments. Okay, whatever, thanks for nothing. This entitled Karen then went out the front door while tugging on her child, and I did not dare to tell her to have a nice day. The poor nurse was just trying to be helpful, and so she then started to apologize. But I let her know that it's just fine, because entitled people like that truly cannot be helped. That lady was just obnoxious. If she would just pipe down and listen to this front desk attendant, she probably would have known where to go and probably made her appointment. But instead, Instead, she tried to act like she knew this place inside and out and just decided right then and there, oh, I know where I'm going. Maybe next time if she just listens though, she won't make a fool of herself wandering around the hospital, and also she might just make her appointment. My manager makes a very inappropriate comment towards me, right as I'm trying to cash out at the end of my shift, but I responded with something equally as painful and hurtful towards him, and I'm not sure what to do. So I used to work at a private restaurant, and I loved every second of it and carry what I learned with me in terms of work ethic, multitasking, and the importance of keeping face as well as customer service through every job I'd had seen. Part of the reason it was such a great gig for over 2 years was because the two owners were hilarious and for the most part were respectful to all their workers, but were quick to strictly enforce their rules and stand up to terrible customers. Overall, they really were great guys, but arguably a little rough around the edges. Cue now the worst interaction with this guy. A week before this interaction, I was in an accident and had a large cut on my arm. I try not to talk about my personal business at work, and this injury, combined with some crazy, insane issues with my roommate's girlfriend, caused my chipper demeanor to be changed. Coworkers started to speculate what was going on, and I can only assume rumors were floating around. I went to the office to cash out with management at the end of my shift, and I caught the owners. They were done cooking for the day and they were shooting whiskey. They were a bit under the influence, and they started joking around. In retrospect, maybe they were just trying to cheer me up, but I had a short fuse, and the joke landed wrong because of the chaos going on in my life. I say something a little mean in response to the joke, and the owner looks at me and says, "Oh yeah? Well, maybe next time you try to hurt yourself, make sure you finish the job." After that, everything stopped. I stood there with my mouth open, fuming. I kept staring and said quite plainly something I never expected I would ever say. I looked at him and said, "Wow, I'm starting to see why your wife left you." I quickly finished cashing out and I got out of there. The next day, when the owner wasn't there, I pulled our main manager aside and I said, "I can handle a lot, but that was too far. I didn't try to hurt myself, but man, what if I did?" We had a long discussion and he asked me what I wanted to do about it. I told him that I don't need to kiss and make up per se, but I just wanted to make sure that my sentiments about the situation were explained to him. The owner never ended up apologizing to me, but I could tell by the way he was overly nice to me and never joked with me again that he realized he was wrong. What a sketchy situation. In my opinion, and maybe I'm the minority here, if you're the owner of a restaurant and you're getting drunk on the job, then you probably need to find somebody else to run that place. That's really irresponsible in my opinion. What if something went down and they needed you right then and there, only to then find you plastered in the back office? I think that's just not a good look, and it's honestly not acceptable in my opinion. I also think the comments that the owner made is just really disgusting, hoping that they maybe next time just finish the job of hurting themselves. There is a very heavy and nefarious implication associated with them saying, "Oh, I hope you hurt yourself," and hopefully the nuance of that is pretty obvious to you, if you know what I mean. So that especially makes that comment incredibly hurtful. So hopefully something like that doesn't happen in the future, and hopefully the owner of this restaurant doesn't just get plastered with whiskey shots in the back during business hours at that. That's really unprofessional and really should be saved for your own personal time. Today I messed up by taking a girl on the worst first date she has ever been on, eventually leading to everything spiraling out of control, with her inevitably getting a DUI right in front of me. Here's what happened. So I was a bartender at a small dive bar, and a friend of mine by the name of Diana, that's not her real name, came in with one of her friends by the name of Sarah, also not her real name. I was catching up with Diana and could tell her friend was into me because she was flirting pretty hard. Diana was getting pretty tipsy throughout the night, and Sarah decided it was time to go home. Sarah then slipped me her phone number and said to let her know when her friend got home safe. The rest of the night was fun, and we had a good time catching up. After I sent my friend home in an Uber, I texted Sarah and let her know that her friend was in an Uber heading home safely. She immediately responded that she didn't give me her number for that reason only, and I said that she made it pretty clear about that. And after that, we made plans to go on a date a couple of days later. Fast forward to the date. We went to a semi-upscale restaurant downtown, and I was a little nervous because Sarah was very attractive and a little bit out of my league. We really got into it and started having a great time. We ordered some beers as well as some food, and it seemed like we were having a good connection. But this is when things really went south. Halfway through the date, my nose starts gushing with blood out of nowhere too. This sometimes happens to me when the air gets dry or when the seasons change. I get up quickly and I start running for the bathroom, leaving all my stuff at the table, my phone included. I was in the bathroom for probably about half an hour trying to stop this nosebleed. It felt like so much time had passed that I was almost sure that she had gotten up and left. I finally came out and I see that the table had been cleared bed, and everything was boxed up. I sit down and I explain what happened, and she said she actually thought I just ghosted her, so she paid for everything. It didn't really make sense to me why she thought that, since I left all my stuff at the table, but whatever. We finished the date on a good note, and made plans to do this again within the next few days. I walked her over to her car across the street, I gave her a hug and a kiss, and I said goodnight. Where she messed up, granted, is that I only had 2 beers over the course of the whole date, as did she. But while I was in the bathroom, she must have slammed a couple of shots or something, but seemed fine to me. As I was walking to my car, I see her peel out the wrong direction up a one-way street with a cop sitting right there. The lights turn on and she gets pulled over in front of the lot that I am literally parked in. And to top it all off, she's blocking my only way out. I get in my car and I sit for about 10 minutes while the cop runs her information. A second cop car pulls up, and it's at this point I realize it's gonna get bad. The cop pulls forward and waves me through to let me out, and I go straight home. The next day before going into work, I get a text message from Sarah saying that she had some personal stuff come up and that she isn't ready for a romantic relationship right now. And I said that I totally understood. When I got to work, my boss already had her mugshot pulled up and asked me how my date went last night. So it pretty much confirmed my suspicions. She ended up getting a DUI, and we honestly never got that second date. What a terrible situation. I mean, first off, how does she honestly assume that you just straight up ghosted her when all of your stuff is literally on the table? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize, oh, he's probably gonna come back. And I bet there was some kind of interaction of him saying, oh, excuse me, I'm gonna go use the bathroom real quick. But also, why on earth was she drinking so much and then deciding to jump behind the wheel? That's really irresponsible in my opinion, and she absolutely should not have done that. So honestly, this is not your fault. This kind of seems like it's her own fault for getting drunk and then getting behind the wheel. There's no way you could have predicted that, so I wouldn't be so hard on yourself. But hopefully she learned a valuable lesson, because getting drunk and then trying to drive is never a good combination. My fiance and I are having a huge fight over our wedding, since I don't want his toxic brother there, but he is demanding that he should be allowed to show up. And now I don't know what to do. I'm a 27-year-old female and my fiance is 25. We've been together since my senior year of high school and have been engaged for about 6 months. We've just started the process of wedding planning, and so far we don't have an exact date yet and no one has been invited. My fiance's brother, who's 22 years old, is, to put it simply, a bad person. We've never gotten along. I've always been close with his other family members, but his brother has been mean to me since day one of us dating and is literally a criminal. He was in and out of juvie throughout high school, mostly for shoplifting, and once because of a threat he made on school grounds. He currently is unemployed and taking complete advantage of his girlfriend while he does illegal substances and she works 2 jobs. My brother and him are the same age and we're in the same class, and they absolutely hate each other. He was my brother's bully in high school, and my brother came home on multiple occasions literally crying because my fiance's brother was making fun of him or trying to peer pressure him into illegal activities. During this time, my fiance was always on my side and would talk to his brother and try to stop it. He's never been close to him and never defended his behavior, which is why when I told him I don't want his brother at the wedding, I was surprised that he had any issue. A few nights ago, we were making a guest list of everyone that we want to invite, and we were writing down all the names of his family members. I told him, well, everyone besides your brother can come because obviously we don't need him there. Much to my surprise, my fiance got super upset with me. He told me that he's family and it would be wrong not to invite him. He said it's his wedding too, and I don't get to decide whether or not his own brother can come along. I told him I'm not under any circumstances having someone like that at my wedding, especially since my brother will be there and it will probably cause a fight. I told him it's a no, period. I'm not even considering inviting him. He then said that I'm being controlling and I'm acting like it's only my wedding when it's also his too. But am I really? I just don't want toxic people there. I don't want fights between our brothers. And like I said, my fiance and him are not even close. It's not like I'm taking away his best friend. They literally haven't spoken to each other in a year. My fiance has been mad at me for a few days now, especially over me saying that I don't want him there, period. But literally neither of us are budging on this. And now I don't know what to do. I'm worried if I don't let him come along, it'll ruin the whole day for my fiance. And if he does come along, it'll ruin the whole day for me and my brother. What should I do? This is definitely a tricky situation. There's clearly a history here where your fiance's brother is an absolutely garbage human being, and it runs deep. He literally bullied your brother while they were in high school, and that's absolutely inappropriate. The first thing I would look look to is see if there's any kind of progress as a human being. Like, has he grown up at all? Or is he legitimately still that same immature person who's doing terrible things all these years later? There is a chance that he maybe has changed, who knows? But it's obviously still a possibility that he is still this reckless, toxic person. So on one hand, you could try to let him come along and maybe have a budget for some kind of security guard, specifically to keep an eye on him. So if he kind of loses his cool, or if he shows up high, or starts anything with anybody, he will immediately get removed. It's definitely important to have some kind of compromise in this situation, because maybe this is your brother's way of extending an olive branch and trying to reach out again. He probably just doesn't have another opportunity to do that. Who knows? There's a lot going on here. But either way, hopefully this works out for you, because this is a special day for the both of you, and it would really suck if this guy comes in and completely ruins the day for everybody involved. My entitled son steals my dead wife's ring and uses it to propose to his toxic girlfriend. Things got so bad that I threatened to call the police and take him to court for breaking into my house and stealing a family heirloom. And as a result, his gold-digging fiancé has left him, and he now blames me for all the misfortune in his life. And I honestly don't know what to do. Here's what happened. To say I was mad would be an understatement. I have a son by the name of Jake, and Jake was a good kid growing up, so him doing this was a complete shock to me. I have a daughter too by the name of Amber. When my wife passed away from COVID nearly 2 years ago, she already had a will in place. She was immunocompromised due to a prior condition that she was diagnosed with a decade before she passed away, and she made sure she had a will set up just in case anything happened to her. And in said will, she divided her assets between our children, and Jake got his cut as he was already 21. He used that money to put a down payment on a condo, while also getting his mother's car in the process. But the will stated that my daughter was to get all of my wife's jewelry, and that included a vintage gold ring with a diamond on it that had a light blue sapphire on each side. That ring has been passed down for generations in my wife's family. It was even originally her grandmother's wedding band. Her grandfather's husband was a jeweler and handcrafted the ring for himself, and it was passed down to my wife's mother when her grandmother passed away, and then to my wife herself when her mother passed away. So it, along with all the other jewelry, was to all go to my daughter. This will be important later. When my wife passed away, my grief was intense, but I powered through it for the sake of my family, and they supported me 100%. So the betrayal from my son was just a rusty knife in the back for me. For the past 8 months, Jake has been dating a girl by the name of Sarah. She has my son wrapped around her finger, and she loves jewelry, as she adorns herself with it a lot. My son mentioned the family jewels my wife left his sister to Sarah one day, and Sarah really wanted to see them. So Jake went into my room when no one was home and showed them to her. He later admitted to me that he had done this, and when I found out, I was absolutely angry. But right when I thought that would be the end of it, I was wrong. Jake then came to me a week ago and begged me for that ring from his mother's family jewels because he wanted to use it to propose to Sarah. He said Sarah had fallen in love with the ring when she saw it before, and he just thought it'd be the perfect ring to ask her to marry him with. He seemed completely convinced that I'd jump for joy for him wanting to propose, but instead, I told him that I was not the person to ask, as the ring belonged to Amber, and I wouldn't have him pressuring her to give it up either. For a fair chance, I'd allow him to explain his reasons and ask her for it once, but only once without pressuring her. And if she refuses for any reason, that would be the end of it. Jake agreed and asked Amber for the ring right in front of me, but she told him no, because she wanted to keep it in the family jewels and has always loved that ring. To her, it's completely priceless. She couldn't bear to ever give it up. I told Jake that was that, and not to press the matter any further. Jake left looking very unhappy about not getting the ring, but I thought he would let it go and look into finding a smaller one. But he came back another day while I was at work to talk to his sister after she got home from school. Jake and Amber then got into a huge fight about the ring, and Amber called me crying. So I called Jake and I told him to get out of my house and leave his sister alone. Jake yelled at me that he has just as much of a right to that ring as his sister does, because my wife was his mother too. But I reminded him that he got a lot of his mother's money and her car. The jewelry is Amber's and only hers. He then quickly hung up on me, and Amber later texted me saying that he left very angry. Later, right before I left for work, my daughter called and told me that Jake came back. He walked in dressed in a suit, went into my room and took something. Then he left without saying anything to Amber. She tried to keep him from leaving, but he shoved shoved her out of the way. I rushed home as soon as my shift was over, and I checked my wife's jewelry box. And just as you would suspect, the ring was gone. I immediately called Jake, but he wouldn't answer his phone, so I messaged him, stating that I'll call the police if he doesn't return the ring. Using it to propose to Sarah won't stop me from taking it back. That eventually finally made him call me back, and he tried to say that I couldn't do that to him, simply because he's my son. I said I can and I will, because he outright stole the ring, and he'd better bring it back right away, or I would take drastic measures. Well, he phoned me right after that, and in a whisper, he said that it was too late. He had taken his girlfriend out to dinner and proposed to her with the ring. He didn't even have it for more than an hour by this point, and yet the ring was already on her finger. I said that was his problem. He stole the ring and he should bring it back. It is not his, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure it's returned. And if that means going to the police and blowing the whole situation up, then so be it. I will file a report. I'll even get a lawyer involved. At this point, Jake started crying and saying that I couldn't do this to him. I told him, tough luck. He stole from both his sister and his dead mother. I would not back down until that ring was returned. Jake wouldn't stop crying and making excuses, so I told him to have the ring back by morning, or I would be moving forward with legal action. Jake is my son, but he still broke the law, and I couldn't overlook what he had done. He said he'd be by in the morning to talk, and ended the call while crying even more. Well, Jake did show up in the morning and brought his girlfriend with him to try and guilt trip us. It turns out she not only knew he stole the ring, but she also wanted to keep it anyways. And this is because apparently she was completely in love with the ring since she first laid eyes on it. I told her I didn't care. She could have a jeweler make a copy of it or something like that, but the original doesn't belong to her. It belongs to my daughter and deceased wife. Jake begged me one more time to not make her give it back, but myself and my daughter stood firm. Return the ring or face the police, and maybe even a potential lawsuit. Jake's girlfriend pulled the ring off her finger and dropped it in my daughter's hand. They called me an evil jerk, then left my house in tears. Jake started screaming at me, stating that I may have just destroyed his relationship. I responded by saying that he did this to his own relationship by stealing a ring that didn't belong to him. What kind of son steals from his own sister and dead mother? That is honestly just terrible. Jake had nothing more to say to me and walked out to follow after his girlfriend. I didn't get anyone else involved in the situation, but Jake did. He tried getting support from friends and family, but he got the exact opposite reaction that he'd hoped for. They were all mad at him over what he had done. I got many phone calls and messages from people offering me condolences, saying that they were not on Jake's side. I tried to do damage control, but now everybody knows. It's been a week now and Jake refuses to speak to me. I've sent him detailed pictures of the ring, just in case he wanted a jeweler to replicate it, but making a copy would be a very expensive ordeal. That is, unless he uses some fake stones or something along the lines. And thus far, there has been no response. I don't know what the situation is with his girlfriend, and I don't even know if she even is still his girlfriend after what happened, but I still stand by the fact that Jake had to return the ring. I have since had all my wife's jewelry placed in a safety deposit box that only I have access to, and the jewelry will remain there until my daughter is 21 years old, and it may even stay there if she wants to keep it safe that way. I know I'm in the right to have reclaimed the ring, however, I don't want my son to hate me, and I don't want the family to hate me as well. The original poster actually gave us an update to further explain the aftermath of that situation. Here's what they had to say. Well, my son's girlfriend Sarah has officially broken up with him. He is devastated and blamed me entirely. Some previously pointed out that I gave him too much credit in saying that he was a good kid. He honestly used to be, but the person he is now, I just do not recognize. Whether he was always like this deep down, or if he just fell for the wrong person and let her change him for the worse is a mystery to me. But it doesn't justify what he did. After I forced him and Sarah to return the stolen ring, she apparently spent days crying on his bed, then told Jake that she didn't want a different ring, no matter how much he told her that he would get her another one. She was simply adamant that she wanted my deceased wife's ring, and she couldn't imagine possibly having a different one for their engagement now that it had already been on her hand, despite the fact that it had only been a few hours and it was stolen goods. The last time I met someone who cried that much about being made to return stolen property was when they were 4 years old. I heard more than one person say they thought Sarah was being a big baby about it. The situation was no secret because Jake spilled the beans, looking for support to the whole family, as well as Sarah's family and friends. As previous readers know, that backfired backfired badly for them. Well, after Jake's failed gambit for support, all the local drama lovers latched onto the situation like barnacles on a boat, and they kept messaging me with more information, even though I wasn't asking. So I was being kept in the loop, even though Jake and Sarah weren't talking to me. My son had the pictures I sent him so that he could try and replicate the ring, and took them to a jeweler. The jeweler said he could make a similar ring based on the pictures, but he'd want to closely examine the original to take proper measurements and to make an evaluation of the stones and metal in order to see what it'd take to make it as close of a copy as possible. Jake waited for a while until finally swallowing his pride to call me again. His girlfriend was finally at least entertaining the idea of making a copy, but she wanted it to be an exact copy, down to the smallest detail. They called me after a couple of days and asked me to bring the ring to a jeweler to get a proper quote on the cost of making a duplicate. I agreed to an extended lunch break and went to the local jeweler. I got the ring from the safety deposit box and I guarded it closely. I could see Sarah's eyes light up with greed the moment she saw it again. She reached her hand out and asked to wear it just one more time, then pouted like a child when I told her no. For all I know, she could have taken off running the second she had it. The jeweler looked at the ring very closely for a while and said it was worth more than we thought, and that if they wanted a copy of it, it would cost a lot of money. The ring was decades old and expertly crafted by my wife's grandfather sometime in the 1940s. The jeweler was singing its praises. The diamond and sapphires were decently large for an engagement ring, and the ring itself didn't use a slim gold band, but a pretty thick and heavy one, made of what was estimated to be 18 carats of gold. But there was more. The stones themselves were set in platinum, and the ring had many ornate floral carvings on it. The stones alone to make an identical ring was more than Jake's current budget, and not including antique value, making a copy of a ring just like that with that much variety of materials would cost a lot of time and labor, because every part of it would have to be handcrafted. It was 5 times what Jake had saved up. The best he could have done would be to make some kind of down payment and then spend years in debt just to have the ring. Sarah enthusiastically wanted Jake to have the ring made anyways, but the cost was just too much, so the jeweler suggested they have one made that looks just the same. It didn't need to be an exact copy of the same materials. They could use a center stone that looked just similar to a diamond and replace the platinum with a similar metal, but it would have to be at a reduced cost by a lot. There was also a suggestion of looking for a modern ring that looks very similar to what's already been made, which would be far cheaper as well. In fact, the jeweler already had 3 rings set aside that all look somewhat similar with a central diamond and sapphires, and they were all reasonably priced. Jake was all in for the idea, but Sarah suddenly slapped him, calling him a cheap wannabe. She then turned on her heels and called me an evil jerk again for taking the original ring back, because it had already been given to her when Jake proposed, and it should still be hers regardless. Then she held up her hand in the manner one does when they expect you to put a ring on their finger, and outright demanded the ring back, while saying it was her right to wear it, and that my daughter wouldn't need it because it would go to waste with her. She actually said it's not like my daughter would be doing the proposing to anyone, since a man could just get a different ring for her someday. And when she said that, oh boy did that make me angry. And she clearly noticed how angry I was, because she took a couple of steps backwards. I looked her dead in the eye and said that my wife's family ring will never be hers. It wasn't Jake's to give away, and he knew it. That's why he went out of his way to steal it while I wasn't home, because he hoped I wouldn't demand it back if he used it, but neither he nor she had any right to it. Then I said that it's entitled people like her that are what's wrong with the world now. She acts like whatever she wants should just be handed to her, and she's lusted after my wife's ring ever since Jake first showed it to her. That whole speech was a bit long-winded with some conjecture, I know, but I just couldn't hold myself back verbally anymore. My wife used to tell me that if I wanted to insult someone, I always figured out exactly what to say. After I said all of that to Sarah's face, she aimed to slap me too, but I guess the look in my eyes was enough to make her turn away and storm out instead, while very loudly making some sort of intelligible tantrum noises that hurt my ears. She even intentionally knocked down a counter display on her way out. Jake was glaring at me with absolute rage, but didn't say anything until I asked him why he was with such an awful woman, but he just said that he loved her and followed after. To his credit, she is very beautiful, but it's really just skin deep. Sarah wouldn't talk to Jake for a while, and then a few days later told him that they were through, because she felt like he didn't value her enough to get her the ring that she deserved, and that she couldn't imagine having me as a father father-in-law. She said she felt thoroughly humiliated by me and cried that people all think she's a gold digger now. But honestly, I don't think they are wrong. I mean, she slapped my son just for suggesting that they make a cheaper version of an expensive ring that he could not afford, then threw a massive tantrum just because I wouldn't hand over the original when she demanded it. That's the behavior of a gold digger if I have ever seen any. And while it is an assumption on my part, exactly how long would Sarah have stayed with my son if someone rich came along and swept her off her feet? Would she have been inclined to still stand by him? Something tells me not so. I honestly feel like she just wanted the ring and nothing else. Right after the incident with the breakup, Jake did try to get into the house again while I wasn't home. To do what exactly, I have no idea. But if I were to speculate, he may have been after the cash I kept in my safe, or thought that the family jewels were still in the house. I hadn't told him at that point that I had them stored in a safety deposit box, and I didn't really want to think my own son would break in for either of those reasons. But he stole from us once, and he could do it again. It was suggested that I should probably change the locks on my house, so I ended up doing just that. So now Jake's key no longer works, and I'm even looking to get cameras set up in my house as well. My daughter Amber called me after Jake showed up and said that she was terrified while he was banging on the front door, demanding to be let in. I called his cell and he didn't pick up, but I guess it spooked him because Amber said he left right after his phone started ringing. He has a very specific ringtone for me, so he knew it was me calling in an instant. Jake later called that evening, but before he could start yelling at me, I demanded to know what in the world he was doing trying to break into my house while I wasn't home. He scared his sister and she nearly called the police. Jake dodged the question by being angry about me changing the locks, stating that I don't trust him. And I said, you know what? I don't trust you, especially not after what he's done. Jake then fired back, saying that I couldn't just be happy for him, and that if his mom was still alive, she would have wanted him to use that ring to propose. At this point, I saw red, and I said that if she wanted that, she would have put that in the will. So he began to whine and say that it was all my fault. He explained exactly what Sarah said when she broke up with him, and how she called me a horrible person, among other things. Then ranted about how I always thought Sarah was never good enough for him, but I never said she wasn't good enough for him. I barely knew Sarah to begin with, and I never once got in the way of him being with her until he stole the ring. He tried to deny that, but I asked him when I'd ever had anything bad to say about Sarah prior to the ring incident. He really sounded like he was trying to think hard, but even he couldn't remember any actual time, because I barely saw this woman ever while they were dating. I wasn't even aware they were dating until at least 3 months had gone by in their relationship. But that was all besides the point. Why on earth was he trying to get into my house? And when I asked him again, he refused to answer. So I answered for him. I said if he was after the ring or any of my family jewels, they have been moved to a safe, secure location that only I have access to. And if he was trying to break into my safe for my emergency cash fund, there's no way he would ever get it open. At this point, I may have hit the nail on the head with at least a few of those things, because Jake just had a long silent pause on the line. Then he told me that he's made up his mind to put in for a transfer at his job and sell his condo. He wants to move as far away as possible and never speak to me again. His last words to me were to have a nice life with my favorite child. I don't understand how my son was so completely changed on this level in just a year. I never actually called Sarah a manipulative gold digger until recently. I said she had my son wrapped around her finger and she loves jewelry, though I guess that's not all that different in the long run. But in truth, she is very manipulative, and she definitely is a gold digger, especially after the drama that she put on to try and keep a ring that was never hers. I mean, she spent days crying in bed over a ring that she knew was stolen, and then had her huge tantrum at not being able to get it back or a copy of it. And now, because of her, my son has chosen to wash his hands of me and his sister altogether. I am honestly devastated, but at the same time, I'm furious that my son would do such things just to appease this witch of a woman he'd only been dating for about 8 months. That's not enough time dating before proposing. I dated my wife for over 2 years before popping the question. I shudder to think what things would have been like if that witch had actually married my son. I know Jake is going to blame me for a long time, and I'm not sure if I'll ever speak to him again, but I hope one day we can reconcile. But for now, I think we just need some time apart. Amber is also very upset. She's extremely thankful that I got the ring back for her, but she is just as shocked as I was that Jake has become like he is now. And she's referring to him as a brute for how he shoved her aside when when he stole the ring. Thankfully, she has a great support system with me and the rest of the family, which is something I know Jake doesn't have right now. Multiple family members have called or messaged him just to tell him off, and his now former best friend even came to me to apologize. He and Jake got into a nasty fight over what he had done, and when his own best friend since elementary school didn't see things from his side, Jake just cut him off as well. Jake's ex-girlfriend Sarah also got in trouble with her own family. Her parents contacted me to ask for my side of the story and then apologized for their daughter's behavior. They only knew a small bit of what happened, but they were appalled to hear about the way she acted. Like Jake, they said she used to be a much kinder person, but in the past few years she's changed so much. They are severely disappointed in her, especially after everything they've done to help her out. I can only hope that one day my son comes to his senses and finds happiness again. Whether or not he ever chooses to speak to me again is honestly up to him, but until then, I'll hold out hope that he'll one day return to being the kind person that he once was. That was a roller coaster of a story. There's so much to unpack here, but first and foremost, the original poster is not the jerk in this situation. Their son literally stole from them in a very serious way, a family heirloom that's absolutely irreplaceable, and they did everything correctly in my opinion. Jake in this story is unbelievably entitled, not to mention his crazy girlfriend. I mean, I'm with the original poster here. That lady was probably going to get that ring and then dip. There was no way she was going to stay with Jake in the first place. She probably would have just put that ring on her finger and then cut town, because based on what we've been told, it really seems like she's that kind of person. So good for the original poster for putting his foot down and retaining the ring that means so much to his family. And hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, him and Jake are able to make amends. But I think either way, the original poster hasn't done anything wrong, and all of the blame squarely lands on Jake's shoulders. An entitled old man forces me to get up from the disabled seating, claiming that my knee injury was not good enough of a reason for me to stay where he clearly wants to sit. And I've honestly never been more upset in my life. Here's what happened. So I have a bad knee, and we can't figure out what is wrong with it. It's not a big deal because most days it's just a bit achy, but sometimes it gets so bad that I cannot put any weight on it while it's bent. If I do, I will fall or probably make it worse. Those are rare days, but today was one of those days where I was basically limping with a knee brace. Lucky me, am I right? I was in pain, but I really needed to get my medication as well as my mother's medication from the pharmacy. She's just recovering from a major surgery that leaves her shoulder temporarily paralyzed, and I cannot drive yet, so I had to take the bus. The thing is that we live in a very rural village halfway up the mountain. There is no police station. There is literally no chain businesses. Nothing like Walmart or stuff like that. There's a couple of gas stations, but there's not even a doctor's office. They are working on a building with a walk-in clinic and a pharmacy, thank God. But in the meantime, all of those things are a highway away. It's been a blizzard yesterday and the whole night, so the roads and everything is covered in a good blanket of snow. But the weather itself today wasn't as bad. It was just cold. To make everything even worse, the buses only come down to my village once every 2 hours, and the connecting buses in the main city don't match up. So what would be a 30-minute trip to the pharmacy is now a 4-hour outing. So I'm in pain and it's cold, and I know I'm going to be wandering around Walmart aimlessly for at least 3 hours, but I'm willing to endure it because my mom really needs these meds, and I can't cope well without my own meds either. But it's not all bad because while I'm waiting, I can look for some Pokemon card deals or something like that. So finally, I get my medications, and I ended up buying some Pokemon cards for myself. And lo and behold, I was pleasantly surprised when a bus pulls up at the bus stop almost right away. My bus isn't this one, but I heard from my friends that this number has an end destination of my village and just goes the long way around. So I confirmed it with the driver and I got on, thinking I just won the lottery. I knew the route was bumpy, but I would be able to just sit for an hour and just relax until I could get home, check on my mom, and then open up my Pokemon cards. So I got on this bus and I sit down in the front row, which is reserved for physically disabled people. I really hate doing this, but my knee was getting the worst it's ever been from walking around, and I honestly didn't trust it to take me the few steps to the regular seating. I figured it wouldn't be a big deal, as this bus is usually very empty. Another nice lady in a wheelchair comes in and gets situated, which made me feel a bit uneasy, but I just shrugged it off. These buses are not designed in the best way as to fit a wheelchair in the proper space they have to flip up a whole section of seating. After a few stops, the bus is actually quite full for some reason, and I felt a bit stupid sitting there with my Pokemon box. But I'm only about 40 minutes from my village, so it's no big big deal. An older gentleman comes onto the bus, and immediately he stares at me. I'm a bit of a meek person, so I avert my eyes immediately. I only look up when he clears his throat. He's glaring right down at me now. I try to subtly stretch my leg with the knee brace out to show him that I'm actually sitting here for a reason without actually engaging with him, because I really hate confrontation. He barely looks at it before he makes eye contact with me again. The old man looks at me and says, "Could you move?" I look at him and I say, "I'm really sorry, but I've been walking around all day." And before I could even continue to explain what's going on with my knee, he chimes in and says, Yeah, I've been walking all day as well. I'd think a young woman like you could stand a bit longer." I look at him and I say, "I've got a bit of a knee issue. It's pretty bad right now." And right about now, I wanted to shrink up into nothing, as I hate having attention and I hate taking up space. He looks at me and says, "Look, kid, just move. Wearing a knee brace doesn't mean that you get to take this seat from the elderly like me who need it." I wish I could say that I stood up for myself and that the other passengers backed me up, but really I just stood up and scurried into the corner by the door to try and shrink away. Thankfully, most of the other people pretended not to notice the exchange, and the old man didn't talk to me again after that. The bumpy ride was absolutely terrible the entire way home. When it comes to the old man, I don't completely fault him, because I take the bus often, and when I'm not temporarily disabled, I'm always standing or sitting in the regular seats if I can. Maybe he's seen me do this before, and that's what's fueled his skepticism. I'm not really sure, but either way, it was a painful ride home, and I did end up getting some kind of Pokemon card that I liked, so I guess that's kind of a silver lining. That really sucks that the old man decided that you need to move. It makes me question whether or not there are even seats available that he could have taken, because it sounds like he was being the typical weird entitled person who just likes to claim everything in front of them as if it's theirs, and that's truly unfair for you. So I'm really sorry that this happened, and hopefully the next time you ride the bus and you have to sit in those seats because of your knee, that guy isn't there to try and ruin the party. And maybe next time just tell that guy to get lost. I mean, you don't have to move if you don't want to. You yourself know that you need that seat, and he's not about to put his hands on you to try and throw you out of the seat. So hopefully next time you can just ride the bus in peace, and hopefully you never get treated like that ever again. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I rejected my creepy coworker, stating to him that I would much rather be friends than go on a date. And now, as a result, he has gotten progressively more weird, creepy, and incredibly rude. And despite reporting him to HR, he still has a job, and he still stalks me and does these really creepy things. And I honestly don't know what to do. So basically, I knew this guy in college. He always liked me, and the most I ever agreed to was to go out to coffee, which didn't even happen. We were okay friends, we spoke there and then, and sometimes we would play video games together, but I let him know that I wasn't interested in a relationship. Anyways, I planned to apply to this job I'm working at a while ago, before I even ended my program. I apply and I find out that this guy works there, which is fine for the most part. I messaged him and I told him that I'm applying, and he said, "Oh, that's cool." Eventually, I did get hired, and unfortunately, this is when he starts getting weird. He asked me out again and I rejected him, and I said that I would rather just be friends and all that good stuff. He then takes this horrendously. He was so convinced that we were going to be together, despite the fact that he barely knows me. I let him down as nice as I could, I swear. He's now gotten progressively worse. He spam messages me on all my social media, and I can deal with that for the most part. But then he started to add some of my friends on social media just to ask them about me. I said, "Please don't do that." And he says, "Oh, so I'm not allowed to make friends?" But at the end of the day, he doesn't even know the people that he's adding. He's only adding them so he can get more information about me. He also hacked my Teams application at work. Well, not really hacked, as he has an administrative access, but he went through all my messages and saw my manager speaking to me about the situation, and that's when he went off. The best part about it is that my manager only knows about the situation because this guy messaged her in a drunk rant about me. He has shown up to my house twice on 2 separate occasions and honked the horn like 100 times, each at about midnight. On these days, he can honestly probably spam call me about 200 times as well. He rage messaged me on our work teams, stalked me on my other social medias, and I had to block him on pretty much everything. He constantly rants about me on the Teams application and complains about me to our manager. She knows he's been stalking me too, and you know what? HR knows as well. And I don't want him to get fired, but I mean, what do I do? I've told them pretty much everything, except him showing up to my house. I'm saving that for if this escalates even further. He keeps making rude comments to me through the day about my work. I ask him to please stop, but he just gets worse. Here's the thing, I don't make any mistakes, but when I do, he literally spams me on my Teams app up until I open the message and makes sure to let me know that I did something wrong, and I've only been here like 2 months. He will literally make verbally aggressive side comments, knowing that I can hear him. I've explained to him that we're both adults, and this middle school behavior needs to stop, but he just denies doing anything. He literally acts like a child. For example, he messaged me on Friday asking if I was going to the work Christmas party and follows it up with, "If you're going, I'm not. I don't want anything to do with you inside or out of work." He deletes all his messages, so it just looks like I'm talking to myself too. It's honestly so unneeded. He will also just spam react to my messages and send the period punctuation over and over until I open his messages. And this is during work hours, mind you. If I don't reply, he has a hissy fit and threatens to talk to one of the managers about me. He will also walk past my desk about 20 times a day. He tries to see what I'm doing, and it annoys me so badly. He works at the other side of me and will literally walk all the way around to use the bathroom near me just to try and see what I'm doing. Once, I literally turned around and I saw him moving his head in a way to get a better look at my phone, despite the fact that I was on a lunch break. What more can I do? I'm extremely shy, so it's hard for me to stand up for myself, and he knows this. The verbal comments throughout the day and the spam messages are making me extremely anxious and uncomfortable. What should I do? I'm honestly surprised you have not gotten the police involved. If someone is showing up to my house and basically harassing me outside of work, then that's enough for me to be like, okay, I'm getting the cops involved. I'm gonna call the cops and say this guy is harassing me. It's also insane to me that he has not been fired yet. This is the definition of workplace harassment. This guy is going out of his way to bother you and to basically stalk you at work. And the fact that HR hasn't done anything about it is absolutely insane. I mean, are they asking for some kind of lawsuit against them? Because literally this is what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to mitigate situations like this, because this one especially sounds really creepy. Here's the thing, it starts out with creepy text messages, as well as messages at work, as well as him basically obsessing over you all the time, and then it leads to something a lot more dangerous that can put your life in danger. So if I were you, I would start documenting everything that he's saying and present this to HR every time it happens, and I would get the police involved. I would say, this guy is harassing me and stalking me, and I don't know what to do in this situation, and I need help. I would also, if I was in your shoes, probably talk to an attorney. I mean, this is seriously crazy and creepy behavior, and I'm sure you're a nice person and you're shy, but you know what? It's just not worth your safety to try and be nice to this guy. He is a stalker, and this behavior is super dangerous. So you can report him to HR again and see if they can do anything about this, but if nothing is done inside the company about this, then getting the police involved and showing them exactly how this guy's acting might be your next best bet. And by the way, you've only worked there for 2 months, so quitting is definitely always an option. So whatever you decide to do, it's time to take some kind of action, because this is seriously scary behavior, and it's not something that I would take lightly. This next story is an update to a previous story we covered on the channel. In this story, the father had to deal with his son by the name of Jake, who stole the ring of his dead mother and tried to use it to propose to his now ex-girlfriend. Terrible things went down, the ring was eventually returned to the father, and Jake separated from his father and said that he would never talk to him again. Here's what the original poster had to say as an update. "I was hoping for no more drama or anything of the like, but it just didn't stop. Yes, Jake sold his condo. For how much, I honestly don't know, but he probably made a profit flipping it. And last Saturday, he pretty much just took whatever he could fit into his car and left. As a side note, Jake had been saying he was going to do this for a while, just to try and get away from me, claiming that I basically had ruined his life. From what I know, the last few weeks have been hectic for my son. People all over town know exactly what he did, because the gossip train never stopped. At one point, Jake nearly got into a fight with a man at a bar, because this guy called him out in front of everyone there. I tried to take the initiative by going to see him one last time. I hope that maybe we could talk things out and make amends before he left town, because at this point, I'd realized his moving away was the best thing he could do for himself. He had already destroyed his own reputation, and he's better off starting over somewhere else. But when I got there and knocked on his door, he refused to open it. I tried to say I only wanted to talk, and he told me through the door that there was nothing to talk about, other than the fact that I ruined his life. There was a bit of a pause, where he was only speaking intermittently. Then he suddenly went on a rant about the ring, and how I should have just let Sarah keep it. Then went on to say that I should have also offered to help pay for the copy, but it didn't matter anymore. Sarah was confirmed crazy, and they are through for good, just like he's through with me and his sister. After he said that got me angry, and I retorted that what he did was unacceptable. He assaulted his sister while stealing that ring from my house, for crying out loud, and he's honestly pretty lucky that he didn't get arrested for that. And literally, everyone who knew what he did was against him. That's the kind of red flag that shows you are in the wrong on a citywide scale. Then I told him to drop the act that he's been putting up for the sake of his pride. I said that I don't know if he rushed things with Sarah because he missed his mother, or because he's now at the age that I was when he was born, or whatever other reason he could have. But the fact still remains that he knew what he did was wrong, and he just won't admit it. And I'm tired of trying to stick up for him. I didn't escalate the situation for anyone. He and Sarah did that themselves. I'm tired of being blamed for his own wrongdoings. That's the sort of thing narcissists and cowards do. His mother and I raised him better than that, and he should know that his mother would not have approved of his actions. But she's not here to say it. It doesn't matter who you are. If you steal something that's not yours, you can't then go blaming the person you stole it from for being mad about it and doing whatever they have to do in order to get it back. There was then a silent pause on Jake's end for a few seconds, and then he just said, "Screw you, Dad." After he said that, I could hear him crying and hitting things inside, and that's when I noticed down the hall that one of Jake's neighbors was poking her head out the door, and she went back inside the moment I looked at her. So I knew right then and there that this is going to end up back on the gossip train. Jake refused to say anything more to me, so I just left. But when I was leaving the building, a police car pulled up right in front of the condo building. Two officers got out of the car and asked my name. When I told them who I was, they said that they had been called by someone in the building saying I was trying to break into their apartment. I said I had an argument with my son through his door, but I didn't once try to force my way in, and I only touched the door to try and knock on it. I told the whole story of what happened, and then pointed out which neighbor had been watching and listening, and that the building had CCTV. One of the officers went up to talk to the neighbor, while the other detained me in handcuffs. He was very polite and said that the handcuffs were just to make sure, since they don't know who's telling the truth. I said he's just doing his job, and he let me sit on the bench nearby while we waited. The officer who went in the building called on the walkie-talkie after about 10 to 15 minutes of waiting. I'm not sure since I couldn't look at my watch, but he said that the neighbor's story more or less matched up with mine, and there was apparently more than one neighbor who was listening in who corroborated the same story. He then said he was going to talk to the building security and check the CCTV for that hallway. This took a fair bit longer, and again, I couldn't look at my watch. I just sat waiting on a bench near the entrance. But the kind officer pulled up a radio app on his cell phone and let me listen to it for a while to pass the time. The other officer finally came back on the walkie-talkie and told his partner to uncuff me because the CCTV had cleared me. He said that while the audio wasn't great, you could see and hear enough to show that I never once tried to force my way in. I was uncuffed, and after the other officer got back, the two of them briefly spoke to each other for a moment. Then, he actually asked me if I was the guy whose son stole his dead mother's ring. I confirmed that I am, and I asked him how did they know? They then said that they both heard about it through the grapevine, and after hearing my version of events, they put two and two together. One of them said he was in the office the day Sarah was arrested. Apparently, she was acting like a wild animal and was trying to bite at them, and she made several threats stating, "Do you know who my parents are?" as well as other horrible things. Eventually, the officer just told me to go home, and that I was probably better off not coming back. I nodded in agreement and I just left. I saw the police go back into the building as I was leaving, most likely to talk to Jake. I know it was him who called the police because his neighbors messaged me later on social media saying that the officers gave him a solid chewing out for wasting police time to the point where he was crying again. And I guess they also pointed out the ring incident and said that what he did was pretty low. I'm not sure how Jake handled that, but it sounds like he heavily embellished what was going on when he called the police. And from the time I first arrived to when the police got there, he had to have called them right around when we started talking through the door. He's beyond lucky that they didn't arrest him for calling them under false pretenses. I went home and I was comforted by my daughter Amber, and she told me I tried, and it's not my fault Jake has gone bad, but it still hurt. I may have lost my son permanently. I ended up just taking the day off of work and locking myself in the office to play some video games, just to try and unwind. My son left town over the weekend, and I may never see him again, but if I do, I hope he understands that I will always care about him. Yes, he wronged me, but I'm still his father. He could come to my door tomorrow wanting to talk, walk, and I would let him in. I just hope that day doesn't take 10 or 20 years, but rather I hope it comes sooner. What a terrible situation all the way around. Because you're right, your son literally did this to himself, and he's too prideful to admit that he was in the wrong. And that's really unfortunate, because I really think a lot of his problems could probably be sorted out if he simply said, "I'm sorry," and tried to make amends. Instead, he's just doubling down because he's being prideful. And that's not fair for anybody involved, especially when you consider how much damage he caused not only to his family's name, but also to his own reputation. I mean, he basically threw his family under the bus and disowned his father in a way that's so inappropriate. And it all stems back to this decision to break into this guy's house and steal something that definitely wasn't his. I think if there was better communication involved, this all could have been avoided altogether. But instead, he's basically stuck between a rock and a hard place. And now he has to cut town just to try and have some kind of life again, which really sucks for him. But he did do this to himself. He stole this ring to try and use it to propose to his girlfriend, who most definitely would have taken it and run. And if that happened, that would have been absolutely tragic for everybody in the family, especially when you consider that this is the original poster's wife's ring, and this ring has been in her family for such a long time. What a waste to have that thrown down the drain, all because of the selfishness of this original poster's son. I mean, honestly, I think moving really would be the best option for him. He definitely ruined his reputation in that town. But even then, people have messed up bigger in other situations, and they're still able to make it work in the town that they live in. But I think the key ingredient here is humility, and it sounds like the original poster's son doesn't have any in his body. So I hope the original poster is able to get through this situation just fine, because they literally did everything they could to reach out to their son. But it's just unfortunate that they have decided to go in a different direction, despite your best efforts to try and make amends. An entitled Karen freaks out at me and threatens to sue me because I got her online order wrong for the grocery store I work at. And just as I'm trying to clock out for the day, she actually puts her hands on me and stops me from leaving the building, screaming at me that she's going to get me fired. And as a result, she got banned from my store, and I honestly am blown away by the way she acted. Here's what happened. So first, some context. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I work as a personal shopper at Safeway. If you don't know what that means, have you ever placed an order online? I'm the dude that goes around the store and fills it. It's an alright job, though every now and then, I have to deal with some crazy parent who has decided that I am personally at fault for everything bad to ever happen in their lives. And this family happened to have two of those types of people. A couple of weeks ago, I was filling someone's order as I usually do, and everything was going fine. It was a Thursday, meaning it got pretty slow around the afternoon. There was this one specialty artisan bread that the lady had ordered, which we had in stock, but for some reason it didn't scan properly. Stuff like this happens all the time. When that does happen, we substitute it in and move on to the next item. The problem was that this lady had selected no substitution in the app, which basically meant I had to override that in order to give her the bread that she wanted. Normally, we're not supposed to override the no sub rule if the customer specifies so. However, we have to make exceptions for code issues between the departments. If something doesn't scan properly, we just substitute it in for itself, if that makes sense. Either way, she was going to get the bread that she wanted at the same price, and all was supposed to be well. That is until about 30 minutes later, when I get a call on the store phone. I answer with my typical customer service greeting voice. "Thank you for calling Safeway. This is the original poster. How can I help you?" And this entitled Karen just goes absolutely nuts on me. She is full on screaming at me over the phone. She's saying, "I asked for no substitutions. Why did you substitute the bread, you idiot? I clearly specified do not substitute and you ignored it." And she just went on and on and on. When she was finally done shouting, I explained the whole situation to her, that the bakery used a barcode that didn't work, so I had to substitute it in to give her the bread. She would still be getting the bread she wanted at the price she would have normally paid. I've had to deal with similar situations a bunch, and normally they just say they understand and hang up, and it usually ends there. But in this case, she was not having it. She says, "I don't care. You still substituted it in, and I asked for no substitutions." So I explain it again to her, and guess what? She's still infuriated. She screams, "Let me talk to your manager. You clearly can't do your job. I want to talk to a manager right now." She then started screaming, "I'm a single mom with an autistic son. I can't come to the store and shop for myself, so I expect my orders not to be messed up like this. Is that too much to ask?" Now, as a side note, I understand the part about having an autistic son, by the way. I know that autism is different for everybody, but I have an autistic brother who needs to be watched by someone all the time, or else he'll do something very expensive, like breaking something or something along those lines. For example, last time he was left alone, I came back to a power outage. And that's all to say that yes, I know where this lady is coming from. It was like the more she spoke, the angrier she got. Before long, she was full on cussing me out and threatening me. Once she was done, she asked to talk to the manager for the 6th time. So I just say, okay, and I transfer her over to the manager. Not even a minute later, I see him come to me out of the office. According to him, she just said I should be fired and then immediately hung up. He asked me what I could have possibly said to make her so mad, and I explained the whole situation to him. Very rarely am I ever actually mad, and I'm never rude to people at work, so he totally believed me. He tells me to just go about my business while he figures out what he should do about the bread. And honestly, shout out to this guy. He is genuinely one of my favorite people. About 15 minutes later, and 15 minutes away from the end of my shift, I'm overall feeling pretty good. All the remaining orders for the day have been filled, and now I'm just waiting for them to be picked up or delivered. I'm signing out of the computer when a woman approaches me and grabs my shoulder. Now, I get there's no way she could have known this, but I hate being touched, so this was already kind of off-putting. I ask her how I can help her, and she asks me for my name. I tell her my name, and then she turns red with rage. It was at this moment that I realized it was the entitled Karen on the phone. She then starts screaming at me, so loud it drew the attention of pretty much everyone in the store. I was less worried about what she was saying, even though she was threatening violence and apparently legal action for some reason, but rather I was more so worried about how this looked to people around me. I'm a 6'5" lanky dude with a mustache, and I'm currently being shouted at by a short blonde lady threatening to sue me. The manager eventually gets involved, and he separates us. She goes up to the manager, demanding that I be fired for messing up her order, but instead he just asked her to get out. I wouldn't find out about this much later, but apparently at my store, touching an employee without their consent can get you banned. As far as I'm aware, the situation ended once she left the doors, though I later realized that if she had an autistic son that she couldn't leave unattended, why was she able to come to the store just to shout at me? I wouldn't be surprised if she really was just that neglectful. I'm not accusing her of lying by any means, but it did seem odd that her main reason for not being able to come to the store didn't matter anymore when she came to the store just to shout at someone and just to get herself banned. Either way, this entitled crazy Karen will never be a problem for me ever again. Talk about the biggest overreaction the world's ever seen. I mean, this lady's freaking out over bread. Like, what is going on? Like, it's one thing to be annoyed that a store changes things around or maybe something gets swapped around, like, okay, whatever. But this lady was literally threatening violence as well as a lawsuit against this poor hourly worker who is just trying to get their job done and go home. I mean, how crazy do you have to be to act like that? And worst of all, she was still going to get the bread that she wanted to. She's clearly an idiot and she just did not know what she was talking about. So hopefully for the sake of this original poster, this lady never comes back again because she's clearly unhinged and she most likely has been lying about her autistic son. I'll just go ahead and say it for the original poster. Karens like this definitely like to make up stuff just to try and get on the pity side. That way they can try and have some kind of weird emotional manipulation over you. So maybe next time if she wants to get her order correct at a grocery store, she should just go in and get it herself instead of screaming at some employee who's clearly just trying to do the best they can. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for wanting my sister to go to the doctor's office and get some medical care, all based on the way she's acting? Before I start, I would like to say that my parents aren't the best at scheduling medical help. For example, I had to get my friend's mom to reform my toenail as it was ingrown for 7 months, and they kept forgetting to put me on medication. Also, the reason that happened is that I have a birth defect where I had extra bones in one foot. Instead of buying meds for my toe, they were scared there wouldn't be enough acne medications. Now with that backstory out of the way, I'm 16 years old and I just finished school for the year. My sister is 10 years old and is too lazy to go anywhere vital and would prefer to go to an amusement park instead of to the doctor. Lately, my sister has been having a horrible cough, and it's one of those you know burns your throat and are just horrible to have. She's barely been eating anything, a bite of a waffle or a bowl of fruit at best. I know it's still COVID time, but it's been well over a month. This is now a medical problem. She also has some mental problems that she is currently dealing with. If someone is to eat something in my family, she will scream at them, saying that they are being rude and disrespectful as it hurts her ears. Even if it's a drink she she yells loudly. My nanny has even said that she yells at her. I once came home at 10 o'clock at night from a volleyball tournament, and I hadn't had lunch because I had no money, and I had a piece of dried mango the entire time, and I just wanted dinner. Our living room and kitchen are basically one room too, by the way. My mom, my sister, and I are in these two rooms, and I made a pesto pasta and started eating at the kitchen table. My sister then yells from the couch in our living room, "Shut up, you're disgusting for eating that green gunk. Go stand in the pantry if you want to eat." My mom turns around and tells my sister that she can't hear me and that I'm closer to her than my sister, who's about 10 meters away. My sister then walks up to me, snatches away my food, and throws it out. "That will make you shut up." I couldn't move, nor could my mom. My sister just goes back to her iPad on the couch and stays there. This habit of hers started about 4 months ago, only happening rarely and quietly, but now it's every night or so. Also, to back this up, my mom sometimes talks and eats simultaneously. I never do this, and if I'm asked a question, I wait to finish chewing. My dad doesn't eat dinner with us because his schedule is so chaotic, but if we all go out, he's incredibly quiet. My nanny is big on table manners and has never eaten with her mouth open. She defended me during my sister's little rampages. My sister repeated this behavior so many times, even to our nanny who's 70 years old, to the point where both my nanny and I had to get my mom and start saying that she needs to go to a doctor. We had lists of reasons why that needs to happen. My nanny even told us about her friend's niece who refuses to eat in public or with others because of the sound of chewing. My mom looked at them and said, "But she doesn't really want to go. Don't worry, it's just a phase, she'll get through it," and then walked away. We have since brought this up several times because it's getting on my nanny's nerves. Honestly, it's getting on all of our nerves, and we just want her to go to the doctor, which she still won't do, and my mom won't schedule it for some reason. If you're asking why I can't schedule the appointment, I'm not a legal guardian, and I don't have enough accessible money to pay for an appointment. My nanny can't schedule it because she as well isn't a legal guardian and doesn't have her Medicare card. My parents have enough money to go to the doctor, and my mom has designer bags for crying out loud. Now, my sister has found out that we want to send her to a doctor, and she's just super angry with us. She yells at us that she's fine, but she's not, as she still complains 24/7. She still has a nasty cough, and she won't go to a doctor or get medical help. Of course, I can't tell if she just wants attention, but she can't keep this act up for long. I need my mom to get the doctor's appointment, but she doesn't want my sister uncomfortable with someone asking her questions. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for telling my mom that my sister needs to go to the doctors? Because at this point, I'm honestly not sure. I don't think you're a jerk in this situation. First off, the way that your sister is acting is super inappropriate, and it's crazy that your mom is letting this behavior just slip on by. She literally took the food out of your hands and threw it in the trash can, and then went right back to her iPad as if nothing happened. This weird controlling behavior needs to be stopped like right away. And she's had a cough for like a month. It sounds like your mom's being very neglectful, and that's not fair for anybody involved, especially your little sister. So honestly, some intervention of some kind might be for the best all around. And I don't think you're the jerk for voicing your concern. And sure, you and your nanny are absolutely annoyed by the way your sister's acting. It's inappropriate and it's very abrasive for literally no reason. I mean, people eat food all the time. You can't really live without it. And I'm sure that your little sister would be singing a different tune if you flipped the script and started screaming at her anytime she ate in front of you. Maybe that way you can give her a taste of her own medicine and show her just how ridiculous she's being. So hopefully this works out, and just know that you're not the jerk in this situation. You're just trying to help out your sister and your family, not to mention your own sanity in this situation. I'm married to my wife, but I possibly have feelings for another girl that I currently manage at my job. And after several text messages late at night, as well as phone calls with this female coworker, I'm confused about how I feel, and I don't know what to do. So I married my wife 3.5 years ago, and we have a 1-year-old daughter together, and I truly love them both. My wife is attractive, and I get told from the other guys that I'm lucky to have her. Last year, I was at a work Christmas party, and a girl I work with was being very flirtatious, and I was probably flirting back too. Anyways, nothing happened. But the days following that, my head was all over the place. I honestly think I dipped into a bit of a depression, but going to the gym and keeping myself active stopped that getting any worse. I felt like I had feelings for the girl, and wasn't just the normal attraction to someone that you would normally feel. I had heart palpitations, and my heart was racing constantly when I thought of her. I also couldn't get her out of my head. As the weeks and months went on, those feelings thankfully died down, but never fully went away. I'm now that female coworker coworker's line manager, and we do still have a lot of banter together, and we clearly get along just fine. I do still find her attractive, obviously, but I felt nowhere near how I felt last year. That is until the work Christmas party came back around this year. I didn't really interact with her too much during the night, which I was surprised at myself, as I, along with everyone else, was pretty drunk. But we shared a few words and a few glances towards each other across the table, and then I received a message from her at 3 in the morning asking me where I was. I was still out in the club at this point, although I had separated from the group I was with, as they went to get some food. I messaged her back saying that we, meaning me and the others, had went back to our accommodation, and that was the end of the text interaction. Then in work the next day, she almost abruptly brings up that another colleague was alone, and that's why she was texting me at 3 in the morning. The thing is that I know that this other colleague went directly home from the club at about 2 in the morning. The girl also left the club at about 2:30 in the morning with some other people for food, which she slipped up and mentioned later on. And then after that, she went home. So I would say I'm about 80% sure that she was sending me a text message for more nefarious reasons, if you know what I mean. Either way, this has messed with my head again, and I can't stop thinking about this girl. I don't want to feel the way that I did last year, but also I'm worried that I have feelings for this girl. I genuinely don't know what to do, but I don't want to go through weeks feeling like rubbish simply because of this fairly minor interaction. All the cards are on the table. We've exchanged a few messages back and forth, initially work-related, but then a little bit of teasing, but she didn't respond to my last playful message. I don't want to have feelings for this girl, but I unfortunately feel like I may have some. Her look, her smile, etc., it just does something to me. People were speaking to me yesterday, and I couldn't even listen to what they were asking me because all I was doing was thinking about this. What should I do? This is absolutely inappropriate. So you're telling me that you're flirting with a younger coworker, all at the expense of your wife and your kid, and you're seriously trying to figure out what you should do? I don't know, maybe be loyal to your wife? This is so disrespectful to your wife and your relationship with her. By actively sending playful or teasing or flirting messages with this younger coworker, you're beginning to walk down a path where you're going to cheat on your wife. Like, this is how it starts. So if you want to keep your family, you need to stop. You need to stop all interactions with her, like right now. Tell her that you feel like you're crossing a professional boundary and you won't be replying to any messages or calls unless it has something to do with work. You seriously need to come back to reality and realize you're about to ruin everything in your life. Because here's the thing, you're married, you're not blind. It's human to find another person attractive in passing. You take note about it and then you carry on your day. But the fact that you're entertaining this woman and basically saying, ooh, what if I did send a flirty text message, is in no way, shape, or form going to be good for you and your current marriage. So honestly, get a hold of yourself. Also, for context, this guy is 31 years old and his female coworker is 24 years old. You are old enough to know better and to have some kind of head on your shoulders to protect your marriage and yourself from blowing up that marriage. So hopefully you're able to come to your senses sooner than later, because right now you're messing up big time. And if you're not careful, you're going to lose your wife, your kid, and possibly even your job for trying to pursue this younger coworker. Today, I messed up by telling my younger daughter that she had a feral sister who lived in a cage in the attic. And I'm here to tell you that was a massive mistake. First off, I want to say that this happened a few years ago. My wife travels a lot, which means that when my daughter was about 6 or 7 years old, the two of us would have lots of nights together where we would play games or read before bedtime. One time, we were sitting on her bed before sleep, and about halfway through a book, when I closed it, I said to her, "We really love you, honey. I'm so happy it worked out with you. Not like the other one." She looked at me and said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, parenting is hard, and you don't get much practice. So sometimes you make mistakes. Take your sister, for instance. Before you, we had a young girl, and well, it just didn't work out. We were young, and we didn't know what we were doing, and it did not go well. My daughter just looks at me and asks, 'What happened to her?' I said, 'Well, we didn't really know what to do with her, so we just locked her in a cage in the attic and decided to start over. And we're lucky that we did, because that's how we got you.' I then opened up the book again and started reading, as if I hadn't just dropped a bombshell on her. Now, of course, my daughter had tons of questions, and I just made up all these facts about her supposed sister by the name of Maggie. I said that she can't speak English, and that she just kind of grunts and sings as a way of communicating. I also said that she is violent, and we have to slide food to her with a stick. And we've also become worried lately because of some of her drawings. You know, fun stuff like that. My daughter knows I'm full of garbage, so she doesn't believe it, but kind of wants to know the truth for sure. So we come up with lots of cool stories stories about her sister, who lives in the attic. Sometimes when we would read, I would stop and I would look at the ceiling and go, "Shush, did you hear that?" Probably nothing, before going back to the book. One time, she asked what she would do if she ever got out. Now, as a bit of context, the one thing I didn't tell you is that the door to the attic is in my daughter's room. So I told her, well, I said if she ever gets out, just lie still under your covers. She's not mad at you, she's mad at mommy and daddy. So a few weeks later, I'm working as a lunchroom monitor at her school. This is a volunteer thing that you do a few times a month, where you walk around the lunchroom and help little kids open their milk and stuff like that. My daughter is at a table with her friends and they call me over. One of the girls by the name of Colleen asked me straight up, "Molly says she has a sister who lives in a cage in the attic. Is this true?" Now this is where I messed up. What I should have said was, no, that's just a made up story. But what I did say is, I don't know, while smiling and shrugging, indicating that maybe there is a kid being held in a cage in our attic. And at the time, I didn't think much about it. A few days later, I come in from walking the dog, and my wife tells me the principal wants me to call her. Oh no, I think I know what this is about. My wife is like, oh, she probably just wants to talk about the ice cream fundraiser. And I'm just thinking to myself, no, that is not what she's planning on talking to me about. So I call and she says something to the effect of, "Hi, first, thank you so much for the ice cream social. We appreciate your help. So one of our students' parents called and said that she is worried because, oh, this is so silly, I know, that you are apparently keeping one of your kids in a cage in an attic. That's not true, right?" So now I have to go and explain in detail the whole story, which sounds like I'm a psychopath and the worst parent ever. She was very good about it and understanding, and we nervously laughed it off. The worst part of this was the girl who said something to her mom was a young girl whose mom had been to our house and someone we had driven different places. She knew us well and could have just called us instead of the principal, so that was pretty annoying. The outcome overall was a good one. We've since become very good friends with the principal as well as her husband. So overall, it all kind of worked out in the end. That is actually quite hilarious. It reminds me of that one Simpsons episode where Bart had an evil twin living in the attic and they would feed him fish heads every night or something along those lines. Really fun stuff all around. But this also proves that kids really will take what you say in as truth. So next time, maybe be a little bit more careful with the stories that you tell them. An entitled Karen freaks out on me when I get a picture with Santa, claiming that because I don't believe in Christmas, I'm apparently gonna burn in hell. And I've honestly never laughed harder in my life. Here's what happened. So for some backstory, I'm 20 years old, I'm Jewish, and I work at a toy store at the local mall. So the get your photo with Santa thing is right in front of the toy store at the mall that I work at, which makes sense. Kids can look around while their parents wait in line, or the parents can look for present ideas while their kid waits in line, or they can wait as a family. There are a lot of options with it set up this way. So this incident happened at around 11 o'clock in the morning. I had been working at the toy store, and my boss lets me know I can go on break, so I end up doing just that. I had about 30 minutes, and I wasn't particularly hungry, but when I walked by the Santa exhibit, I saw that there was no lineup because it was a weekday in the middle of the day. Most kids are at school, and most of the parents are working. So since I'm an adult and I don't celebrate Christmas, I thought a picture of me on Santa's lap would be a funny gift for my family on Hanukkah when I'm home. So I get in line. There's one family who currently has a kid seeing Santa, one kid in front of me, and not long after, our entitled mother, our entitled father, and their stupid children. They were all very lovely at first. We had a bit of a small talk while we waited. I asked their kids how excited they were to see Santa, as well as just some generic filler conversation questions. The family in front of me goes, and in hindsight, I think the gears were starting to turn in the mother's head that I wasn't just an older sibling, and I was actually there for myself. The family in front of me leaves. I get to tell Saint Nick exactly what I want for the holidays, even though I don't celebrate it, and I get my pictures. I go back to work and I clock back in, because even without the lineup, just waiting for two families and getting the pictures printed, as well as paid for, took most of my lunch break. And a few minutes later, the family from before comes in. The kids run off to go look at toys, and I give them a friendly hello again, but I am met with a very cold-hearted hello from the mother. Our store wasn't very busy either, given the time of day that it was, as well as the day in the week. So while they were browsing, I was showing my coworkers and the boss the pictures that I got, just for a laugh. And right when that happened, the mom stomps over as if I had just spit in her figgy pudding. She goes, "I'm sorry, I just think it's very rude and immature to keep my kids waiting longer just for a joke." I said to her, "Ma'am, there was no wait, at least not to see Santa." She then responded responded in a snarky way by saying, "You're too old to believe in this crap." Keep in mind, her kids were the only kids in the store, and at this point, she was yelling at the top of her lungs. I say to her, "Ma'am, I don't celebrate Christmas. I don't even believe in it." And I say this a little bit quieter because I'm capable of being at least courteous towards her kids. The entitled father then chimes in and says,
"Well, that's a whole other reason why you shouldn't have been there. You're ruining it for everyone else."
I look at both of them and I say, "Well, it doesn't really matter. Santa says I'm on the nice list, and his word is law." I was very obviously just messing with them the whole time, which is a weird coping mechanism that I've got, where I try to escape conflict just by being funny. The entitled mom then looks at me and says,
"Well, God says you're gonna burn in hell, so you can just forget it."
And at this point, I was blown away, but I had the perfect comeback. I said, "Well, I'm Jewish. We don't have a hell." And it was right about at that moment my boss chimed in and said, "All right, I'm gonna need you to leave if you're gonna keep harassing my employee." The kids came back to find their parents, and one asked them if they could have one of the candy canes we have at our checkout counter. The entitled mom, of course, said no, and I said they were free, so you could just go ahead and take it. Both kids took a candy cane because free candy totally outweighs their mother's words, which is kind of a scary thought without the context. The mom stares daggers at me, called me a name that was really not appropriate for children to hear, but I just smirked and I said to them, "Merry Christmas!" My boss and coworkers are still laughing about it with me as I write this, and hopefully those two parents cheer up and find that joyful Christmas spirit. So this really is a funny story in my opinion. The fact that two parents actually would legitimately get upset because an adult is choosing to get a picture with Santa is really weird. This is honestly the first time I've ever seen anybody gatekeep Santa. I'm pretty sure he's the most accessible person on the planet, regardless of what religion you're a part of. But hey, apparently these two entitled parents definitely think otherwise. Hopefully they're able to find a better attitude towards Christmas, because before they know it, they're gonna ruin it for their kids, if you know what I mean. And I also like the fact that you can definitely tell these people are super entitled, because they know how to fake it when they're in line, but the second they see something that they just don't like, they're gonna run up to you and say, "Oh, you're gonna burn in hell." I mean, that's not very St. Nicholas of you, if you ask me. So hopefully the original poster never has to deal with that again, because I honestly think there's nothing wrong with getting a picture with Santa, regardless of your age. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for rejecting my ex-girlfriend after she came back to me after cheating on me, begging me for some kind of money? So to start things off, I'll go through a little bit of background with me and my ex-girlfriend. We met 3 years ago on a bus. She seemed nice and we talked for a while, and I ended up getting her number. We eventually started dating, and after about a year, she started to let slip her mask. She started yelling at me for little mistakes, like for example, forgetting the dishes or taking out the trash. And I will admit, sometimes it was my fault. I got caught up on something else or something along those lines. But eventually, it was everything I did. If I bought her a present, she would say, "Oh, you should have used that money for something else, not me. Stop being so irresponsible." But if I didn't buy her a present, she would say, "I can't believe you never get me anything. It's like you don't even love me." So it was a constant back and forth. Eventually, I went to surprise her at her apartment. I opened the door with my spare key because I wasn't planning on staying, as I was just dropping off a gift basket. I eventually then hear her and another guy going at it, if you know what I mean. At this point, I saw red, and I threw the door open and I started to yell at her. I asked how long this had been going on, and the guy responded, "Around a month. Sorry, bro, she said she was single." And he walks into the bathroom to get dressed. She then starts wailing out excuses, and I honestly don't want to hear it. So I slam the door, I grab the gift basket, and I just drive home. When I get home, I cry my eyes out. My neighbor must have heard it because they knocked on my door just to see if I was okay. My neighbor is a good friend of mine, and she comforts me and calms me down. Eventually, a few months later, my neighbor and I, we'll call her Sarah, that's not her real name, start dating, and things are great. She is amazing and is always good to me, and I honestly adore her so much. Fast forward to today, and my ex knocks on my door, crying and asking to come in. I tell her no, and I try to close the door, but she actually stops me and asks me if we can get back together. I of course said no, and I tell her to just go away, but she says, "Well, at least give me some money because I deserve it." I ask her why on earth I would ever need to give her money. She responds by saying, "Because my boyfriend left me and I just got fired for too many late days." I asked her why she was late, and she explains that it's because she slept in after having many fun nights before. I tell her to go away because I honestly don't want to hear it, but she yells at me and cusses me out. My girlfriend says I did the right thing, but I'm worried if she actually did need some money and that I just yelled at somebody in need. I hate conflict and I try to help everyone I can as much as I can because I don't want people to suffer, but my ex was also a bad girlfriend and incredibly toxic. So it begs the question, am I the jerk for rejecting my ex and telling her to go away? I do not think you're the jerk in this situation. Legitimately, I think you really should listen to your girlfriend at this moment and believe what she says, that you did the right thing. People like your ex-girlfriend will always be looking for handouts. They'll cheat on you, they'll treat you like garbage, they'll yell at you about everything under the sun, but the second they can get any kind of cash or some kind of advantage out of you, you better believe that they will come back crawling and crying. They'll do whatever it takes to get that money in their hand. And honestly, you do not need that in your life because it sounds like you have an awesome girlfriend right now who loves you exactly the way you are and would never treat you like that. So personally, I would just cut that ex out of your life. Tell her to take a hike and never come back because it sounds like you have a better girlfriend in your life. And honestly, I would just hold fast to that and ignore your crazy, needy ex. I regret telling my coworker that I'm interested in him, and now I feel angry, broken, and very confused, and I don't know what to do. So a couple of weeks ago, I told a guy at my job that I was interested in him. He didn't reply in a negative or positive manner. He just said that he finds me attractive, and later, he added that he thinks I'm courageous for saying something like this. And before even saying all that, he admitted that he's been single for many years because of many heartbreaks, as well as some trust issues, and also that he's not really in the right place at the moment to have a relationship. The reason I decided to tell him I was interested is because he showed me so much signs of interest. He was flirting a lot with me, complimenting me intensely, saying he thinks I'm a beautiful woman, asking me indirectly if I'm single and stuff like that. I mean, all signs basically pointed to him constantly flirting with me, from the deep eye contact to him being very curious about me, as well as asking questions about my personal life. I mean, one day I even told him that there was something I wanted to tell him, but I didn't even know how to say it. And he replied by saying, "Whenever you're ready, just let me know." And then he actually winked at me. And before leaving for the day, he asked me, "Don't forget to tell me what you wanted to say, okay?" And then winks again. I ended up just telling him I find him handsome, but it was like he was expecting me to say something else. I mean, the list honestly goes on. And what really upsets me the most is that when I asked him why he was flirting with me so much, after I admitted I was interested in him, he told me that he flirts with everyone. But I see how he treats other people. Yes, he is nice, and yes, he flirts and compliments people, but it's never as intense as the way I experience it. After that day, when I told him I was interested in him, he was still overly nice and flirty, and he was still touching me, mostly on my lower back and my arms. He was still talking a lot. He even mentioned while we were alone, "So, you like older men, huh?" He winks at me again and he has a huge smile, which is very confusing. However, I did feel a bit awkward after I felt rejected. I'm still nice towards him and I talk to him. I smile as much as I can and I try to be polite, but I am less and less present, and I do talk less and less to him. I noticed also that he's kind of weird. A few days ago, he startled me after I opened the door, and he asked me, "Oh, I hope you don't think I'm ugly." Just kidding. But really, you were just in your bubble, right? Even today, he ate at the same time as me again, and decided to sit closer to me as usual. I engaged in a little bit of conversation with him, and we talked for a little bit, but he was silent the rest of the time, and usually he talks a lot. At some point, we were alone, but I felt like he really wanted to say something. He was silent and he just kind of seemed off. He just ended up asking me why I'm not eating and that I should eat more. So it begs the question, am I making him feel uncomfortable? I'm just really confused by his behavior and I honestly don't know what to do. First off, I always think it's a bad idea to try and ask somebody out that you work with. That is definitely not going to go well most of the time, and if anything, it's going to cause weird situations like this. But on the other hand, this guy is definitely leading you on in my opinion. He's using the fact that you said, "Oh, you're really attractive," and decided to just kind of lean into it as some kind of joke. And that's not fair for you or your feelings. And if anything, you already have your answer about how he's going to treat you. And you know for a fact that it will never be more than just some kind of work friendship. But with the way he's acting, I very seriously don't think it's going to even be that far anymore. Also, this guy's winking at you after he says stuff. Sorry, but that's just a little creepy. That'd be acceptable if you're in a relationship. But for a colleague that you just turned down, no, that's really weird. So do yourself a favor and look for somebody else, because this guy's not interested, and if anything, it sounds like he's just trying to string you along, which honestly is completely unfair to you. Today, I messed up by realizing that my husband and I have been miscommunicating for years, and it's honestly pretty funny. So today, I was talking at lunch with my husband, and we went over the same subject we have unsuccessfully talked about for years. Please also note that we have known each other for almost 10 years, and we've lived together for 5, and we've been married for almost 3. So we were talking about dogs and cats, and he said that cats are pretty good. Now, pay attention to that wording, because that's the bit where we messed up. Over the years, I had been disheartened when he said things were pretty good. From my perspective, he seemed to be emotionally distant and unenthusiastic about things. Everything was just pretty good, and he said it in a very mild tone of voice. So over the years, we tried to talk about it with limited success. Today, when I asked him why he never seemed to show much enthusiasm for things, he was confused as always. He said that he did show enthusiasm because he likes cats, but I explained that he just said that they were only pretty good, and this confused him even more. But somehow, I managed upon the magic combination of words to get him to further elaborate. Usually, he would just repeat that things were pretty good, but today he managed to lay out his scale, and this is how it goes. It starts out as okay, and then it goes to good, then there's pretty good, and at the top of that list is the word great. Now, I have never seen pretty good used in that place in the scale. I always place it below good, as in almost good or mostly good. For years, we had been talking about things, and I was just always under the assumption that he just wasn't really interested in whatever it was. I had to run damage control at Thanksgiving dinner one time because he said my mom's cooking was pretty good. We have stopped watching TV shows because I thought he was only mildly enjoying them and didn't want to be too much of a bother. I eventually just came to the conclusion that he simply wasn't very expressive and tried to place his responses on my scale because he had such difficulty explaining it. And mind you, this has been going on for years. I also got disheartened when he said my dog was pretty good. He calls me pretty cool. When I told him about my scale, he was shocked. He says it must be a southern thing, though I don't really remember it when I lived in Texas. We compromised and said that it must be an Arkansas thing, which is his home state. We both began re-examining our interactions over the years. The Thanksgiving dinner, me explaining to my brother that no, my husband really did like that movie. He just expresses it in that way, especially how he talks about my dog, pretty much all of it. When lunch was over, I assured him everything was okay, and he said I was pretty cool and got this horrified look on his face. He realized that from my perspective, he had been calling me mostly good for years. I similarly realized I had been assuming he wasn't enthusiastic about things because of that wording. It was so embarrassing. I have since encouraged him to be more open about his feelings and his happiness, as well as just confusing him for years. I'm just so baffled by everything. It's good we're learning to communicate, but man, he feels really apologetic now, and I've tried to assure him that it's honestly okay. We're trying to find better ways to communicate, but you know what? It's kind of a process. He has also encouraged me to ask him what he really means when he says things, and this will hopefully be a good way of getting him to rephrase some of the things that he says. Hopefully we can cut down on miscommunications like this in the future. This is really a funny story. You think your partner feels one way and then they turn around and say, no, I actually really enjoy this. And also, if this is scaled from 1 to 4, this person's partner has scaled their relationship at a 3 out of 4, which is really good. Hopefully this works out for them, and hopefully they're able to communicate better, because I can honestly only assume what it's like to go literally years under the assumption that your partner really isn't that interested in just about anything. But in contrast, it must be relieving knowing that your partner is way more into you as well as the people around you than you previously realized. My sister is jealous of my friendship with her boyfriend, and now she thinks I'm trying to steal her boyfriend away from her, and I honestly don't know what to do. Okay, so my sister is dating her boyfriend for about 3 years. He's a good guy, and I'm happy for them. She's a bit insecure about how she looks, but I don't know why, as she is so gorgeous, but she just doesn't see it. Her boyfriend loves her so much and is completely loyal to just her. I also get along really well with her boyfriend. We don't hang out or text on a daily basis, but we talk sometimes, and he's been texting me more often because of her Christmas present. We do those huge get-togethers at Christmas where all of our family, partners, and family friends are invited to my parents' house, and we just eat, drink, and play games all night long, and we have a group chat for planning purposes. My sister and her boyfriend are also in there, as well as other family members, friends of my parents, neighbors, and relatives. We all live pretty close by. I recently moved in with my best friend and got a new bed a few days ago. I couldn't get it upstairs on my own, mostly because there were some big boxes and it was far too heavy, so I texted in the group if anyone is close by to help me out. My sister's boyfriend, we'll call him Jake, that's not his real name, told me that he is in my area and will come over. He did, and he helped me to get it set up. It took maybe an hour in total, so I offered that he can have dinner with me as a thank you. I made a pizza, we ate and talked about the upcoming Christmas, and honestly nothing happened. We just talked as friends. He then left an hour later. Not soon after, my sister called me to accuse me of being into her boyfriend. She told me that I have enough guy friends, as well as guys that are into me, that could have helped me get stuff set up, but I just had to choose her boyfriend. Now, I have told her several times that I am simply not interested in Jake. I told her that there's nothing to worry about, but she didn't believe me and she just cussed me out. She then told me that I'm not allowed to come to the get-together. I talked to my parents and they are on my side and say that she is just overreacting. Now my sister says that she and Jake aren't coming if I come along. I tried to talk to her, as well as Jake too, but she's still super upset and blocked me on all social media, and I don't know what I did wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have invited him to stay, but he did me a favor, so I wanted to show my appreciation for his work, his time, and effort to help me out. And I honest to God would have done the same thing for anyone else who came along to help me with this. We just had dinner. I didn't invite him for anything else, if you know what I mean. She is apparently also mad at Jake, but not as much as she's mad at me. He just texted me stating that she thinks I'm into him and tried to steal him from her. But I'd never do that to her, ever. She's my little sister and I would never hurt her. I'm at a loss at the moment because I want to resolve this issue before Christmas. I don't want us to make a fool out of ourselves for fighting over something so stupid right before the holidays. What should I do? The way your sister is acting is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that has to be some serious insecurity for her to start acting like that. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You literally just had dinner with her boyfriend, and that was just as a thank you for him coming out to help out. There are a few options here, but I think if anything, just explain to her that, hey, maybe I'm just trying to have a brother-in-law type relationship with him and nothing more. It's really unfortunate that your sibling feels this way, so maybe even also talking to the boyfriend and saying, hey, can you try and reel this in and explain to her that you are not interested in me? That might be a good way of trying to get through to her and explain to her that no, nothing is going on. Nothing happened and there's literally nothing to worry about. So hopefully that conversation goes well, because you're right, it is literally right before Christmas, and it really would be stupid to argue over something so small this close to the holidays. My entitled wife blames me for her trip to France going so poorly, claiming that I actively tried to sabotage her trip despite the fact that I paid for all of it and was the only one that planned it out just so she could go in the first place. And now she wants to break up with me, refusing to even talk to me in general until I realize all the wrong that I had done to her. And at this point, I'm so exhausted and I don't know what to do. So my wife has wanted to teach abroad since I've met her. I'm a cautious person at fault, so much so that I told her I really didn't want her to go. This spawned several arguments, with me calling stating that it's a stupid idea, but only out of pure fear for her safety. Regardless of my fears, I realized I was being inconsiderate, and we've since moved on from that. Fast forward to October, and we have a trip to France scheduled in December for 3 weeks. She's teaching at a school in a small village at an old chateau. She's taking our youngest for the entire time, and then her brother is going out with our oldest for a week. I'm staying behind because finance-wise, I would need to work a lot more to make sure we could afford this. During this time, we get into another argument because I apparently haven't helped her plan the trip and she's struggling. My rebuttal is I've been busy with work and this hasn't been a priority as I'm the sole provider for the family, but that proved to definitely be the wrong answer. I eventually came to my senses and take the reins on the trip planning. The plans for this trip proceeded to change 5 times over the next few weeks up until December, causing me to be on my phone quite a bit with airlines, hotels, and other travel vendors to make sure it all lines up. It's pretty inconvenient, and I show flashes of anger because of this, but I always lied and told her everything was fine. After all, I didn't want to make this any worse than I already had. Fast forward to the trip, and it's finally here. The first flight goes well, but then her second flight gets delayed 5 hours, which causes her to miss the connecting flight, as well as the connecting train, and miss the first day of school entirely. On top of this, our youngest started feeling unwell. I was on the phone for 4 to 5 hours with different people trying to get things refunded, as well as rescheduled all over again. Once we got everything settled to get her where she needs to go, I finally got to bed. She then calls me an hour after my head hits the pillow. One of the people from the school picked her up and was very mean. Not rude, just mean, calling her a stupid American, even yelling at my youngest for asking questions. And now she just doesn't want to stay. She said she's scared, and she doesn't want to stay because she doesn't feel safe. She grew up in a very abusive household, and she knows that kind of anger well. So I tell her to leave. We can't get any taxis or Ubers, but one of the teachers can take her into town. They ended up dropping her in the middle of the city with 5% on her phone, nowhere near the Airbnb I had booked. She finally gets to the Airbnb and we're settled in. The next few days are uneventful, and we're just planning things as we go, and she starts to fall into a pit of depression. She says she wants to go to Barcelona, but only if it's financially feasible. I tell her that it's an extra expense and that we didn't budget for it, and she just says, okay, that's fine, and we just get off the phone. After we get off the phone, she starts getting hostile, saying things like, this is exactly what you wanted. It didn't work out, so now I can come home and be a good little housewife and do the same thing every day. I tell her that I feel like she's angry at the trip going awry and unfairly taking it out on me, but she says no, she's upset because she just exists for other people. I tell her that maybe we should create something else to look forward to. I said I'm sorry and that I'm trying to sympathize with her more, but she just keeps getting more angry at me. At this point, I'm confused. What am I supposed to do? I listed off all the things I had done to ensure that this trip went as smoothly as it could, but that ended up being the wrong thing to do again. She claimed I was throwing it in her face and that I've done everything I possibly can to apparently try to sabotage this trip from the get-go. The conclusion from this argument was that she wanted to go to Barcelona, and me worrying about finances and throwing these worries in her face was inappropriate given the circumstances of how awful the planned trip had turned out. She ended up not going because of the country's entry restrictions and came home a few days later, depressed as ever. I had cleaned the house, checked off everything on the honey-do list, cooked her dinner, and got her flowers. I did everything. I tried my best to make sure it was the best environment possible. I told her we were going to plan the family trip to Barcelona next year and go to Greece with friends. We just had to wait a little bit longer, but this didn't seem to change her mood at all. I didn't expect it to be instantaneous, but I felt not seen. Was I selfish for this? I stayed home from work on Monday to be with her, and it ended up with her getting drunk by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yesterday, I went into work and she asked me to pick up the kids from school. I asked her why I needed to do it, and she just responded that she was drinking. I told her that I don't think drinking at home alone in the middle of the day is the best way to handle everything that's going on right now. I asked if she had planned anything with her friends or even talked to her therapist, and she said, what good would that do for me when I've been doing those things for the past 30 years and they haven't done anything to help? I don't want to fake it until I make it anymore. So if that's what you're asking me to do, then you can forget it. I reiterate to her that I was just trying to help and I wasn't attacking her, and she just turned it into me shaming her for trying to cope with everything going on in her life right now. When I got home, we got into another huge argument that ended up with her leaving, slamming the door, and then calling me on the phone, saying things like, your fragile ego can't handle when I tell you what's wrong. And at that point, I just lost it. I said, you know what? Forget it. I'm done with this conversation. And I hung up the phone. She came back and said she doesn't feel like she can fall apart around me, or whatever that means. And to top it all off, she doesn't want to be together anymore. She doesn't want to be with someone that she can't fall apart around. I am so confused. I'm not perfect by any means necessary, but I feel like I literally did everything I could over the last 2 to 3 weeks to make sure that her trip would go as smoothly as possible. And even when things started to go wrong, I did more. Why is she this angry with me? Why am I not allowed to also break down when I feel like I'm being unfairly criticized? We spent so much money on this trip, and I worked 14-hour days last week to make sure our finances wouldn't be more impacted by this than it already has been. She won't talk to me, and she doesn't want to talk to me. She wanted to sleep in the same bed last night, but this morning when I greeted her, she immediately fired back that she doesn't want an in-depth conversation with me. She even said that we could just be platonic friends until I finally came to my senses senses and realized the wrong that I had done. And I'm honestly at such a loss for words, and I really don't know what to do. Your wife sounds absolutely crazy. I mean, talk about an entitled Karen. You planned this massive trip for her to go out to France and teach in some school in the middle of nowhere, and the very second she experiences any kind of pushback, she suddenly flips the script and says that you tried to ruin this for her, when in reality, based on her attitude, she probably did this to herself. Also, she is so unbelievably ungrateful. You literally worked your butt off just to try and get her to have this trip and to make sure you as a family have money for future anythings. Like literally, this probably costs like thousands of dollars. It's not cheap to go to France and then to turn around and be like, psych, I want to go home. Like that doesn't just happen without a lot of money getting thrown around. And when she's inconvenienced, she tries to go to Barcelona. I mean, what is wrong with this lady? She's twisted everything you've said, she's flipped the script completely, and she has practically blamed you for literally everything in her life. I mean, where's the personal responsibility? Where's the motivation to do better with yourself and take responsibility for your own actions? She really sounds absolutely miserable to put up with, and I really feel for your situation. So hopefully this can all work out in some kind of positive way, because the way your wife is acting is absolutely crazy, and you do not deserve to get thrown under the bus like this for something that was completely out of your control. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the link in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for dropping the hammer on one of my employees after they've repeatedly proved that they are unfit to work at my job? Okay, so I work at a major college in the United States. It's a state school, and we have about 18 employees who work for me. We work maintenance for the college, and I've been here for about 10 years. Since my crew works nights, I am a lot looser with the rules than most supervisors. The night crew gets a lot of flack from the day crew, but the truth is, we are pretty tight-knit, and we don't have a lot of drama, at least compared to the day crew. The day crew is toxic to say the least, and most of the supervisors are objectively incompetent, or simply just don't care. Now, we have our own issues, but my general rule is I like to keep issues in-house unless they become excessive. Over the years, I've caught my employees screwing off before. Most of the time, I give them gentle reminders or make vague announcements to the crew that doesn't single anyone out. However, I've recently had an issue with one employee who's been pushing every boundary he can. It's been going on for years, but for the longest time, people on the crew haven't said anything. They don't want to snitch on each other. However, his bad behavior has gotten so bad that nearly half the crew doesn't want to work with him. He's often been accused of being drunk or high at work. Unfortunately, they only told me days later, so there was nothing I could even do about it. He had some strange encounters with people on campus that I documented and even wrote him up for. However, since we are a state agency, getting someone fired is really a process. 2022, however, was his year to really cut loose. I found him multiple times, simply not working or not even at the job site. He would disappear for hours, lie about it, and say he was using the bathroom. It's amazing how many times he used that excuse. He was constantly leaving the job, sitting around on the job, lying about his whereabouts, and just underperforming at work. There were also several days where people reported that he seems to be under the influence. It really came ahead over the summer, where I directly confronted him about being absent from the job for over an hour. He said he had to get something at the shop, which would just normally take about 15 minutes tops. Well, he comes in over an hour later, carrying with him a sandwich that obviously came from a shop. He claimed that he had to use the bathroom again, and that's why it took so long. The problem is, I was tracking him the entire time. I had a coworker at the shop, and I was at the job. He was at the shop for maybe 5 minutes, got back to the job a few minutes later, and then sat in the truck for another 20 minutes, all before coming inside. All this time, he didn't even eat his sandwich. I confronted him and asked him if he was going to eat while everyone else had been working. Bear in mind that he had just had a lunch break right before the I had to run to the shop excuse, and he didn't eat then either. At this point, I had already been fed up with his BS. I told him I was done giving him warnings and that he needed to do better. I told him this is your one and only warning. Literally a month later, he starts back up again, not working, sitting around on his phone while other people are working. He would be out smoking while others are working and just leaving the job in general. Someone even saw him stealing, but refused to put it on the record. I was already in the process of writing him up when I discovered that he took a work truck home as well as to a bar. He left an hour early for break and used a state vehicle vehicle to go to a bar and to his home. I got photos and locations. I confronted him at the bar, and he claimed that he hadn't had any alcohol. Ironically, the big thing that got him in trouble with HR was using the work truck for personal use. That is a big deal here. After his write-up, he was upset and told me that he knew that me as well as others on the crew had broken the rules too. He mentioned that he had seen me in a drive-thru a few times in a work truck. And honestly, this is true. It was extremely infrequent, but I've done it before. But I also haven't done it in several years. Yes, I am guilty of that crime too, but he took his vehicle home and to a bar, and this was all outside of break time to boot. And you know what? That's something I have definitely not done. I have also used a work truck to swing by the store for lunch before. Have others on the crew stopped for coffee in their work truck or got some teriyaki on break? Yes. And he obviously thinks I'm being a hypocrite because of this. However, I think his frequency, severity, and choice of locations make his offense far worse than the rest of the crew combined. He said he didn't want to be that guy and won't report me or the crew. And you know what? I think he's telling the truth, since this would burn several personal friends of his, and he also really does not have any proof. But I have literal photos. I'm not justifying my past actions, but I won't be intimidated by him in this. He's a heavy drinker and uses recreational drugs. And you know what? I don't care about that if it's not at work. But he has increasingly blurred the line and admitted to drinking only a few hours before work started. The worst part is how he's affected the rest of the crew. About half don't want to work with him, and in one case, almost led to a panic attack. He's lazy, dangerous to work with, and toxic. So I'm looking to get him fired, not by being malicious, but by holding him accountable, documenting and letting him hang himself. He's the kind of guy who floats through life and doesn't care about anyone but himself and just getting wasted. And frankly, I'm done helping him. I know I'm leaving out a lot, so this doesn't come back to me in some way. He's of course playing the victim and thinks that I'm picking on him. My guess is that he will quit out of frustration before he gets fired. I wanted to ask though, am I the jerk for doing this? Am I the jerk for letting him hang himself and making himself be held accountable? Because honestly, I'm not sure what to do. In my opinion, you are not the jerk. This guy is literally digging his own grave. The fact that he took a work truck over to the bar as well as taking it home is really not okay. I'm sure these standards of practice in your company is there for a reason. So for him to use those vehicles for personal use, especially going to a bar, is really a bad look. On the other hand, I don't think you going through a drive-thru or stopping by the store to get some lunch is in any way, shape, or form the same level of damage and public ridicule that could be perceived of him going to the bar in that work truck. Like, that just does not look good in the slightest. That basically says to anybody who's interested in your company, oh, this particular organization definitely likes to get drunk. Whereas you stopping by a fast food restaurant or going to the store probably means just that. Oh, they're stopping for lunch. That's about it. They're not instead getting hammered during work, which this guy is absolutely doing. So no, you've not done anything wrong. This guy literally has it coming. And to calm any fears that you might have, I don't think you're a hypocrite for stopping to get lunch. That seems like a very casual, normal thing to do, and in no way is that the same level of severity that this guy is clearly exhibiting. So I really would not worry about this, because this guy has been very clearly skating on thin ice for a while now, and if he wants to fall through and drown, then I don't think it's your responsibility to try and save him. My parents have actively tried to ruin my professional career, while also trying to destroy my personal life, and I honestly don't know what to do. My mom and dad have always created smear campaigns about me, and crossed all my personal and professional boundaries. As an example, my dad wrote a book about me a few years ago. It was full of personal diary entries and other private information. It was essentially a whole lot of projection and lies, and it was extremely creepy. In 2017, I was diagnosed with complex PTSD. At the same time, my parents withdrew support for my PhD. I had two mentors who were separate to my supervisors. One was in her 50s and the other was in her 70s, and they were always supportive of me. They were very disappointed that I had to withdraw, and I just told them that my parents withdrew support and that they were concerned about my physical health. I do have very poor physical health, so it wasn't a lie. The support from my mentors continued. I met them on a work placement in 2012, and we bonded immediately. We would meet 5 to 6 times a year and share lots of professional resources and so on. I didn't tell them about my CPTSD diagnosis or the symptoms and behavior associated with it. At the time, in a family setting, my behavior was pretty terrible, but I was also being abused. My parents even tried to get me criminally convicted for minor property damage, but the judge determined that I was the victim of abuse, and my CPTSD had caused the behavior. I returned to my degree in 2019 after receiving treatment for CPTSD. When I returned for Christmas, I met my supervisors for lunch, and at this point, they were distant and very weird. Usually, they would hug me and be enthusiastic about catching up. One of them just gave me the cold shoulder and seemed very disinterested in speaking to me. The other made some weird comments. She asked me randomly out of the blue, "How old is your mom?" My mom, for the record, is 70 years old, but she looks much older. This indicated to me that they had met up. When I shared ideas for the future with them, as I always have, she said, "One thing at a time, listen to your parents." Then, when I was telling her the date my niece was born, she finished the date for me. I said November, and she said the number. They dodged catching up with me for a couple of years. I asked if anything was wrong. They assured me that everything was fine. I then told them that I really valued my relationship with them and that I was open to speaking about anything. I asked my mom if she and my dad had spoken to them, but they denied it. I eventually saw them again a year ago. They finished the catch-up by saying, "Well, best wishes for the future," and I didn't know what to say. I was diagnosed with cancer last year, and they seemed totally nonchalant about it. I found out that they're hosting a big lunch at a pub for Christmas for people in our field next weekend, and they didn't even invite me. I don't know what to do. There's a good chance that they've been fed total lies. I really valued my relationship with them, and I think they're terrific people, but now I'm honestly so upset. Is there any coming back from this? What should I do? This is actually really tragic. The fact that your mom and dad are actively trying to basically ruin your life is unbelievably toxic and completely inappropriate. This type of behavior is unacceptable in my opinion, and you do not deserve to be treated like this. And it's really disappointing that your mentors would believe you're terrible parents instead of going to you first. If anything, that shows you that their mentorship towards you was probably very one-sided. They most likely only kept it up because you were some promising talent that they could use later in life. I don't know, something along those lines. But for me personally, when someone turns on me like that and basically starts to act like they're not my friend or my mentor in some way, and I know for a fact that other toxic people have had their hands in this relationship, that essentially proves to me right then and there that my relationship with them was obviously very shallow at best, despite how deep I may have thought it actually was. So let that be your exit sign, to be honest. You can find other mentors, you can find other programs. I mean, look at the facts here. They completely excluded you from this dinner event that you obviously would have thought they would have included you in. It's not like you guys don't have history together. I mean, that's insane. So that honestly is really disappointing, and I'm so sorry that this is happening to you. This is so unacceptable. So hopefully you're able to find some kind of solutions here, because the way your parents are acting is so unbelievably toxic, as well as damaging to your career and livelihood as a whole. And honestly, you do not deserve that. An entitled Karen threatens to get me fired from Home Depot, claiming that I was refusing her service and that I had insulted her, all because I don't know how to mix paint, despite the fact that this is not my department. Thankfully, a coworker was there to back me up, and he put this entitled Karen in her place. Here's what happened. So I've only worked at Home Depot for about 4 months when this happened, and I still don't understand why people think they can boss associates around instead of just getting it themselves. I've only been at work for about an hour, and it was a pretty slow afternoon. A few customers scattered here and there, some just browsing about, and others were just picking up all sorts of orders and other stuff. I'm patiently waiting at my counter at the lumber side of the store, and this was just before we swapped to self-checkout registers. I was reading a booklet that my supervisor had every cashier read, and my sign was off. All of a sudden, a paint lid gets dropped on my countertop, and I suddenly whip my head to see this middle-aged Karen standing there looking at me with her phone out and texting away. So I say to her in a professional tone, "I'm sorry, but the paint desk is down on the other end of the store." And before I could describe exactly where it was, this lady said, "I know, but I'm in a hurry. Go get it for me." I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't even work at the paint desk, and I'm not supposed to leave my register unattended." This entitled Karen finally looks up from her phone and says to me, "But I've seen you run the paint desk before, and I know it's you, because you mixed my paint the other day and I need more. Now go get it done for me now." And when she said this, I was really confused. I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, but I think you must be mistaken with someone else. I don't have any paint mixing experience, and I've never run the paint desk ever before." This entitled Karen then says that every time she's come here, the cashier always goes and gets the paint for her. But I stood my ground and I said, "Well, I'm not that cashier, and I don't know what paint mixture you want." This Karen rolls her eyes and says, "Well, that's why I brought the lid. Just take it and run it through the machine and get me my paint." At this point, I'm starting to to feel like a broken record, I say I've already told you, I don't have paint experience. I'm just a cashier and I'm not a paint associate. And this is not the paint desk. Listen, I'm sure the paint desk associate can easily mix it for you. If you go and speak to them yourself, they can help you get it taken care of. This entitled Karen gives me a condescending wave and says, yeah, just go and get my paint. I'm in a hurry and I can't stand around like you people. And at that point, once she said that, I started to get really annoyed. This time I said it more firmly but still professional. Ma'am, this isn't the paint desk and I'm not supposed to leave my cash register unattended. Either you go to the paint desk yourself or you can leave. But this set off this entitled Karen in a way that I was not expecting. Clearly upset that I had spoken to her like this, this entitled Karen said, I said I'm in a hurry and I need my paint right now. And she said this rather aggressively, trying to make me go get this paint for her. But I stood my ground again and I said, I've already told you, I'm not going and you can go to the paint desk yourself. This entitled Karen is now glaring daggers at me and says to me, I don't like your tone of voice that you're using with me. Maybe I should report you to corporate for refusing me service. I respond by saying, I'm not refusing you service. I'm telling you that I can't provide you what you want because I have no experience in that department. Right then, a pro desk associate walked by and the Karen turns to her, demanding to know if she's the manager because apparently I was disrespecting her, as well as refusing to provide her proper customer service. The pro desk member said, I'm not the manager, but I can assist you. The Karen then says, finally, someone who can actually do their job. I need paint, and this Asian kid refuses to go and mix my paint for me when I've seen them mix paint for me many times. The pro desk member says, well, if you need paint mixed, you can easily get it yourself, not stand here at the lumber register and demand that we do it for you. And that finally shut that Karen up. She throws her hands up in the air with frustration and walks away, yelling, nobody in this store knows how to do their job. Why hire workers if they're just gonna stand around and be on their phones only? The pro desk and myself were dumbfounded by Karen's outburst, but we didn't follow her out. Instead, pro desk took the lid and tossed it because it's not our job to mix the paint for her. Besides, the small dot on the lid probably would have told the paint desk what paint the Karen actually needed, but it wasn't going to help me with anything. And the funny part is, at one point I honestly really did want to mix paint, but after asking a paint desk coworker about it, I changed my mind. And you know what? I would much rather be stuck as a cashier than deal with some weird entitled Karen screaming at me about paint. What a crazy entitled Karen. I mean, how weird can you possibly be to not know where you need to go to get your paint mixed? It's like this lady just picked a random spot and decided, I'm picking on you today. Like, it's really strange. And I really hate when people act like this, especially when it's at the expense of other people around them. Thankfully though, the original poster had some backup, because otherwise this crazy lady probably would have stayed there screaming at this person, demanding them to do a job that clearly was not their responsibility. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. I'm afraid of telling my family that I'm dating someone new, and I honestly don't know what to do. So 3 months ago, almost 4 now, I broke up with my ex-boyfriend of 4 years. I tried to fix our relationship, but he was an alcoholic and would never give up drinking, and he also wouldn't get help for his debilitating mental illnesses, even though they were a burden for me as well. I also just knew in me that he wasn't gonna be the one for me, so this made me check out and grieve my relationship before it even ended. When I told my mom and my sister I was breaking up with him, they were appalled and offended because it came out of the blue for them, and they were upset that I never confided in them about my struggles in our relationship. I didn't want to burden people with my problems, and I also didn't feel comfortable discussing that stuff with them. So when the breakup happened, I feel like they were against me, but ultimately they came around. Flash forward to now, I've been hanging out and getting closer to a good friend of mine that I met at work 2 years ago. He is so sweet and funny, we like the same music, he goes to concerts with me, and is just someone I align with more, and I feel drawn to him. When I first met him, I always knew he was going to be someone special, and I always found him very attractive. I haven't brought up my feelings of liking him to my mom and my sister. In fact, they've never even met him, and this is mostly just because I want to keep things private, but I keep getting anxiety about them getting mad at me for not telling them these things. And the other day, he confessed his feelings to me and asked me on a date. I don't know how to bring it up to them, and I guess I'm just scared they're gonna berate me or try to tell me I'm just moving too fast. I personally feel ready, and I'm just nervous for some reason. They like to be very in my business, and I'm just so anxious to tell them that I'm seeing someone new, especially when my relationship was so long. What should I do. That really is unfortunate that your mom and your sister are really up in your business. Like, that has to be really annoying. And it's also not fair that they were getting all over you about you breaking up with your boyfriend. Like, do you really need to tell them everything that's going on in your life? Why are they supposed to know out of anybody? I know if I was struggling in a relationship like this, I probably wouldn't want anybody else to know. Like, it's nobody's business but my own. So in that respect, I really don't blame you for keeping it to yourself. Ultimately though, it really is up to you. You could go the route of just telling them, hey, I am dating this new guy and I really do like him, but this does basically open up the door to them telling you what you should and shouldn't do, which from the sounds of it looks like you don't really want that. You probably just want them to be your mom and your sister, which I think is reasonable for just about anybody. There's the other option where you just don't tell them what's going on. Go on the date, maybe go on 3 or 4, and then see where it goes. Because I think you already know what they're gonna probably try and say. Oh, it's too early, you shouldn't be dating this early, we don't like him, you can't date him unless we've seen him first. Stuff like that I'm willing to bet is something they will say. So hopefully this goes well for you either way with whatever you choose to do. Because in the end, this is your life, and what they have to say truly does not make a difference, nor should it be the deciding factor of what you can and cannot do in your life. An entitled customer tells me that I shouldn't tell my customers that any kind of gratuity would be appreciated after their dinner, and I'm really annoyed by what he had to say, and I'm not sure what to make out of it. So for context, I work at a bar in North Carolina, which sees a ton of golf groups passing through. It's a huge tourist town, and a dream destination for anyone worth their weight in golf balls. Anywho, this group of 12 came in on a Wednesday night, and mentioned that they had been out in the night before. From talking to my co-owner, I had already determined that she had only had one large group the night before, and that they were super nice and had tipped her generously, on top of the 20% auto gratuity that our system adds when you open a table of 6. Not that I cared, but you know how comfortable it can feel to walk up to a table that you know is easy. Fast forward through service, and they've had to split into an 8 top and a 4 top because our only 12 top was taken, and they couldn't care less. My coworker and I were busy as all get out, but I take good care of them. Everything goes great, food and drinks flow, and I'm just waiting on them to finish up so I can cash them out and grab my shift drink. The guys at the 8 top cash out. I have a double-sided pen with a pink highlighter on the end, so as per usual, I highlight the gratuity as the print on our tickets is small and it tends to blend in with the tax. I also tell each person I hand a bill to that there is an included gratuity due to the size of the party, but that they're more than welcome to leave me a bit extra if they'd like. The guys at the 8 top leave, while the 4 top lingers to watch the end of a game. When I drop their checks, I do my usual speech. The gratuity's on there and I run their cards. But here is where things get a little weird. One of the guys flags me back over after I've done my official goodbye and asks if he can offer me a tip. Internally rolling my eyes, I smile and I say sure. He tells me that I shouldn't tell people about the gratuity. You read that right. He told me that I shouldn't have said anything about gratuity and that I shouldn't tell people in the future. He said that I had done a great job taking care of them and that I deserved the money. My response to this was that I considered it stealing to mislead someone into essentially tipping me twice, and that I was fairly sure it was illegal to do that. He simply continued saying that I deserved it and that I would make more money that way. I told him that I would much rather have my tips be earned and knowingly given to me. I then proceeded to excuse myself from the table. They tipped me well and I was appreciative, but while serving is my job, I care about much more than the money. I take pride in my customer experience and my integrity, and it rubbed me the wrong way that they were offering me advice that equated basically to stealing. I still can't tell if he was insinuating that people wouldn't add a deserved tip on top of gratuity, or that he thought that I should get literally as much money as possible. It was a wild night all around, and I honestly am still trying to figure out what he was talking about. So in my opinion, I think the server's doing the right thing here. They're being honest with their customers and saying, hey, there is already a gratuity percentage that is coming out of this check, thus basically warning them, hey, you've already tipped me and you don't even know about it. So I think if anything, you're just being honest with your customers. You have it right, your moral compass is correct, and you're doing things exactly how it should be. But you know what? Think about the opposite. What if you didn't tell them, and they found out after the fact that they basically tipped you twice? I'm pretty sure somebody's still gonna complain that you didn't warn them ahead of time that they were already tipping you. Like, this could definitely go both ways. But I think the way you're handling it is exactly how I would do it. I would let them know ahead of time, just so there's no surprises on the way out the door. My job is overworking me and underpaying me in a serious way, and I'm right on the verge of quitting and I don't know what to do. So this is mostly a rant because I am one inconvenience away from quitting my job. For some context, context, I serve at a middle-of-the-line sushi restaurant with expensive food that is pretty average tasting. I've only been serving for 3 months or so, and lately I feel super overwhelmed with the amount of work I'm doing, especially since a lot of our servers have just straight up quit. We have one host, one server, and a manager for our lunch shift, and usually the manager ends up serving. Several times I've worked on a random Tuesday when we have a full house for some reason, and my manager and I split the house evenly. Keep in mind, almost every single person orders a roll or a bento box with appetizers and bar drinks that we make ourselves. I also have to bust my own tables. During today's shift, the restaurant filled up fast, and by the time 12:30 rolled around, I had 7 to 9 tables at once, and I couldn't even count how many because I was so busy. My manager had the same amount of people, only he helped out more with the larger parties, and I had mostly tables of 4 or less, with only a few 5+ tables. I was probably serving 25 to 30 people at any given moment. I know we're understaffed, and that the business makes more money off of having less servers scheduled, and my manager has made no efforts to replace the servers we've lost, so things don't look like they're gonna improve anytime soon. I don't know if I'm just inexperienced, so that's why I'm overwhelmed, but every time I finish work, I feel so emotionally and physically drained. So far, the shifts haven't gotten any easier, and I'm not given real breaks, even though my shifts will often run for more than 6 hours. Even my manager said it felt like this place was sucking the life out of him slowly. Now you might be thinking, if I have so many tables, I must be getting some good tips, right? Nope, we made about $300 in tips during that shift, but I don't get to keep my share because all of our money goes into a tip pool that is shared with the front and back of house, including the kitchen. I also believe that the head chef and the manager also get to keep tips. At the end of the week, we got our tips, and for 30 hours of work, I get $200, and that was for the entire week. Another week, I got $160 in tips for 20 hours. So not only do I feel constantly overwhelmed and overworked, but I don't even get the proper tip money in exchange for selling my soul to this place. Is this normal for a serving job? Does it get easier the longer you go? I'm honestly just so depressed with this job. I have never participated in any endeavor that has left me this beaten up at the end of my days. What should I do? That is crazy to me that you can't keep your own tips. If you had less servers and you have all these tables and you're getting all these tips, then maybe this would be worth it. Like if I was in your shoes, I would just make it work if I was getting all this money in tips and I was able to keep it. But the fact that you have to split that with basically everybody in that restaurant is unbelievably disgusting. Tip pools are absolute garbage in my opinion. Give the money to the servers. They're the ones who are basically waiting on me hand and foot. Yes, the chefs made the food, but the servers dealing with my garbage, as well as everybody else's garbage. So yeah, they deserve to have a tip. So from my point of view, none of this sounds normal, and it kind of sounds like you're getting screwed over. You're working way too hard, you're getting very little money, and it's just not fair for you. So I think you should really try to find a new job. This place sucks. Like legitimately, having a consistently full house every day and still only having one server is crazy. There are much better serving jobs out there. These people that you're working for are clearly taking advantage of you, and if I was in your shoes, I would get out of there and I would get out fast. My mom and my grandma only see me as a toddler, and they don't recognize me as a fully functioning adult who's making money and earning a living, and I'm honestly not sure what to do in order to set some kind of boundaries with them. So truly, I really do love my family, but there definitely is a major issue, and I can't discuss it with them because if I try, it results in gaslighting, gatekeeping, silent treatments, and preaching about the Lord like their life depends on it. For context, I'm turning 20 in just a couple of months. I have a job and I help pay for food when I can. I'm actively looking for a second job so I can start helping out with bills in the form of rent, just so I'm not a freeloader. I live with my mother and my grandmother. My mother has been doing relatively okay. She drives me to and from work to help out, and I center my work schedule around hers to compensate for her having to drive me. My grandmother though, dear God, if I wake up even in a slightly cranky mood where I'm so much as not smiling, she's practically in tears, saying that she's worthless, that I don't love her, and then she'll give me the silent treatment, preaching from the Bible the entire time. I'm an atheist, but none of my family knows this, so I just have to grin and bear it. She compares me to me as a child, and my mother and grandmother both do this. They pull out photos of me and say how cute I was, how I was their little girl, how they still, in their hearts, see me as a 5-year-old little girl, and that it hurts them when I'm upset because it's shocking. It's to a point where I resent my younger self myself. I hate memories of me as a child because it's just a reminder that I'm not who they thought I'd be, and I'm just a disappointment. I don't even get that upset. They act like I insult their livelihood. The worst I ever do is glare. I usually just keep my mouth shut because I hate being angry at all, and I usually get over it within 10 minutes or so. I never insult anybody as I feel absolutely horrible about doing that. I also would never hit or even raise my hand. I would never do that. Most I ever say is to remind them that I'm sensitive to loud noises, or that I didn't sleep very well, or I just want to be left alone, stuff like that. They expect me to constantly be a family person, to constantly want to be around them with a smile on my face, to always want to be home and be the toddler that they see me as. They want me to go to church, and they want me to stay at home forever and help them afford things financially, as I'm the only one capable of working. They can't live without me. It is honestly exhausting, and frankly, I feel like I'm going to lose my cool at them every day if I don't figure out a way to talk to them and get them to at least set some boundaries. What should I do? Man, that sounds like a rough situation. It's really weird that they don't do any work at all, and they've basically shipped all of that off to you. And it's also really crazy that they're comparing you to your younger self, basically denying you of any adulthood and treating you like a baby, all while then expecting you to provide for the family. Like, that's just really weird in my opinion, and it sounds like a form of manipulation if anything. They want to try and keep you as a kid, yet still expect you to provide all this stuff for them, and that's not okay in my opinion. I know that if I lived in that kind of situation, I'd be looking to move probably pretty quickly, because that just does not sound feasible, and you just can't be happy with that, to be honest. So if anything, maybe some distance really would do you some good. Moving out really is a big decision if you do decide to do that, and it's something that really does take a lot of time and a lot of thought to make sure it's right. But in this situation, considering that they're acting like narcissists and basically being all around really terrible towards you, some distance and maybe another place to live probably would not be a bad idea in this situation. Today, I messed up by watching so much Family Guy that I had a psychotic breakdown. So about a year ago, I went through a massive Family Guy phase. I don't know why. I had only watched Family Guy a few times before, but for some reason, I started to believe that Family Guy was the funniest show on earth. My best friend at the time also started to go through a Family Guy phase as well, because every time I went over to his house, I'd make him put it on. Anyways, one day I was hanging out with my friend. This was during my college winter break, so I had a whole month off. Since I had a month off, I could stay over at my friend's place for as long as we could stand to be in each other's presence. For some reason, because we had this spare time, I came up with the idea to watch Family Guy in its entirety. We thought it'd be easy. We had a second TV set up where we could run up video games. At this point, we were playing Minecraft pretty much all the time, so we could play that while we were watching Family Guy. Minecraft really doesn't take too much attention, so we would instead be able to give most of our attention to the cinematic masterpiece unfolding on the adjacent TV. One issue with our plan to watch Family Guy in its entirety was that the show is like 6 to 7 days long in its total runtime, so me and my friend decided to leave it running 24/7. Who cares if we miss a season or two overnight? Anyways, I didn't realize Family Guy wasn't the best show to sleep next to, because it'll pretty much wake you up over and over again. Well, me, being the OCD jerk that I am, told myself that I couldn't turn it off no matter what. I had to finish this Family Guy challenge. For 4 days, I got little to no sleep. If I had to guess, I'd say I got 1 hour of sleep total in those 4 days. On day 5, the lack of sleep started to take a toll on me. I started to hallucinate and hear the Family Guy characters talking. I could have sworn Peter Griffin was in my best friend's closet. As the day progressed, so did the severity of my psychosis. I went from Peter Griffin in the closet to I am in Family Guy. I started to believe I was in a Family Guy episode. My friend was Brian, his sister was Meg. I remember waking up my friend to ask if Stewie was okay. My friend, being the jerk that he is, thought this was hilarious, but my mental state was getting worse. After about an hour of this, I started to get paranoid. I guess I was terrified of the character by the name of Herbert from Family Guy, because I started to believe that he was spying on me through the windows. This then progressed to me believing that my friends were helping Herbert out, which led me to get violent. One thing led to another, and I get taken to the ER for sleep deprivation and psychotic symptoms. I'm better now. I'm over the Family Guy phase, as I've now watched Rick and Morty, but next time I'm not gonna watch anything for that long ever again. That sounds like literally a crazy battle to fight. You're losing your mind and you're watching, in my opinion, one of the worst shows on TV. Sorry, for me personally, I'm not a big fan of Family Guy, so I can only imagine the nightmare hellscape you traversed, as you basically stayed up for 4 days and watched these crappy jokes by Family Guy. So needless to say, I am not envious of you, and hopefully something like that doesn't happen in the future. An entitled Karen demands that I date her daughter, and if I don't, she says she's gonna get me fired, and I'm honestly baffled by what went down. Here's what happened. For some context, I'm a 17-year-old male, and I work at Segway Tour Company. It's actually really fun. I get to ride on Segways around the city and talk to people, and I get paid to do it. Plus, the tipping isn't bad. So anyway, there was a tour booked, and a couple of days ago, I came in about 20 minutes early to answer emails and get everything ready. The group shows up, and it's a mom and a daughter, and that's when things get interesting with this entitled Karen and her daughter. So this Karen and her daughter come in, and I check them in. I tell them that we have some waivers that I need them to sign, and then I ask the daughter how old she is. She states that she's 16, and then I direct her towards signing the waiver. I ask this because if kids are younger than 18, their parents have to sign the waiver for them. But this entitled Karen only heard me say the first part, not when I said that the daughter didn't need to sign a waiver. So she actually thought that I was just asking her daughter how old she was. And I'm pretty sure this is what started everything. We go on the tour, and while I'm giving my spiel, the entitled Karen keeps interrupting me to tell me stuff about her daughter and find if we are compatible. I'm explaining how this nonprofit organization opened up, only for this entitled Karen to ask me all of a sudden,
Are you in college?
I tell her no, I'm a junior in high school. I'm usually pretty free with info about myself on tours because it helps keep people relaxed and initiates conversations when there's a lull during the tour. Plus, it kind of helps with tipping. This entitled Karen then says,
Oh, well, my daughter's also a junior. She's an artist.
And this was not an isolated incident. Stuff like this kept happening throughout the tour. And every time, her daughter kept getting redder and redder in the face. My mom does this too, where she just tells random mall attendants about me. So I know what the daughter is going through, and I really do feel her pain. At the end of the tour, I tell the two of them that they have 15 minutes to go around the town, and then they can meet me back up at the Segway place. I get back, and I start getting things set up for their return. They roll in, pardon the pun, and I take the Segways to start charging them. This entitled Karen then continues the conversation by asking me what I think of her daughter. I didn't understand what she was asking, so I said, pardon me, what did you say? She then says,
I saw you checking her out during the tour. Are you going to ask her out?
The daughter then chimes in, begging her mom to stop. I look at her and I say, ma'am, I just recently got out of a relationship and I'm not really looking for anything right now. This Karen was baffled by that because she just looked at me and said,
What? Is my daughter not good enough for you?
I said to her, no, that's not it. I just said I just got out of a relationship. And before I could continue any further, she then said that I am absolutely going to date her daughter and that's final. I responded by saying, you can't tell me what to do. I'm not your kid, and if I don't want to date your daughter, I don't have to. Besides, you haven't even asked me if she wants to date me. The daughter then chimes in and says, yeah, I really don't want to date him. But the entitled Karen wasn't having it, because that's when she said she was going to threaten to call my boss and tell him about my terrible customer service, claiming that I'm never going to work in this city ever again. And at this point, I was absolutely blown away, because she was seriously trying to get me fired because I didn't want to date her daughter. So I pull out my phone and I say, all right, you want to call him and explain this situation? How you're trying to force me to date your daughter and get me fired for saying no? Then finally, I guess the absurdity of this situation finally sunk in, and her face transitioned from pure rage to slight confusion. At this point, she tries to backtrack, but I look at her and I say, no, let's call him. So I start to go through my contacts and I press my boss's name. I look at her and I say, let's have this conversation. Let's do this. And just as the phone started ringing, this entitled Karen looks at her daughter and says,
let's get out of here.
And that's when the entitled Karen runs out the door as the daughter turns to me and says, I'm so sorry, following after her mom. I hang up the phone before my boss answers and I start cleaning the Segways up. And I'm honestly still amazed at the audacity of this stupid entitled Karen. How crazy is that? Imagine trying to do your job and handle some kind of tour group, and this lady's like, no, you're gonna date my daughter or I'm gonna get you fired. She even threatened this person to be like, oh, you're never gonna work in the city again unless you date my daughter, who, by the way, doesn't want to date you either. Like, what a complete weirdo. But you know what? The way the original poster handled this was absolutely amazing. It was so well done. He called her on her bluff right then and there and didn't back down from this weird lady being a creep. So hopefully that lady learned her lesson, that she can't just pawn her daughter off at the next person she sees simply because she demands it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. My husband yelled at me because because I can't move past the fact that my mom passed away, and what he said was really hurtful, and now I don't know what to do. So I lost my mother to terminal cancer 3.5 years ago. It was a traumatic time in my life, and I've been working with my therapist to move forward through some of my grief. One of my more disruptive symptoms is a hoarding compulsion, which makes it very difficult for me to throw away anything, especially my mother's things. And it even goes as far as not even wanting to use any of her things. My aunt and I were the only people there with my mom when she was sick, so I ended up inheriting all of her things. I now struggle sometimes with being overly protective of her possessions. The most difficult thing is the bed frame that held the mattress that she passed away in. Recently, my husband and I were fighting, and he came and sat down on the bed beside me, and the frame broke apart. I started to have a panic attack, and I lost control of myself. I felt as though I could not respond at all and could barely move. He got even angrier and told me that this was another example of my selfishness, the fact that I was being dramatic and not engaging with him. He then yelled at me that my mother died 3 years ago and that I have to get over it. This upset me even more, and he got angrier again. He continued to yell, telling me that his family is going to die soon. And he said this, I guess as a way to suggest that what I've been through is not unique to me. My husband has a problem with being quite mean like this when he's angry, and it's made worse when I shut down and get quiet. I know that it's something I need to work on, and that I can't expect my partner to do all the talking in conflict. However, I just can't get past what he said and how much it hurt. I also feel guilty for being so dramatic and for all the ways that my grief interferes with our relationship. For example, I can have a lot of anxiety about the household, and sometimes I obsessively clean or order things, and it makes him feel on edge in our shared home. He has since apologized, and I have told him that it very deeply hurt me what he said. He said that he knows it was a terrible thing to say and that he didn't realize I was having a panic attack. I don't know how that's possible, to be honest, as I was gasping to catch my breath. But now I'm at a loss. I don't feel any better about it, and I'm ashamed to say his apology meant nothing to me. I don't want to keep bringing it up, asking him to apologize again and again, but I don't know what else to do. Has anyone had a line crossed like this before and gone on to repair things in a way that felt genuine? What should I do? First off, I just want to say that I'm really sorry for your loss. Honestly, who cares that it's been 3 years? This has been a very struggling period in your life, and as you put it, you've had a really hard time getting over this. So I really do understand where you're coming from. I think what your husband said really was inappropriate as well. The fact that he would say basically just get over the death of your mom suddenly is really inappropriate, but I think you are taking the steps necessary by meeting with a therapist to try and help with these compulsions that you're struggling with. Eventually, you really can get to a place where you are more comfortable with putting your mother's stuff away and moving forward with your life. But clearly, you're not really ready to make those steps in your life. When it comes to what your husband had to say, I think he just said that in anger, and he really did apologize. And I think you do have the right idea here. Asking him to apologize again and again because that first apology was just not good enough is only going to cause conflict. So I think you really should just take what he's saying at face value. He apologized, he said he's sorry for what he said, and he didn't know that you were having a panic attack over the situation at hand. Maybe he just completely missed the fact that you were gasping for breath. Who knows? So hopefully this all works out for you, because this sounds like a rough situation, and I can only imagine the grief that you're still struggling with. My 2 entitled friends are choosing to hang out with my parents, who have abused me and treated me so poorly my entire life. Things are so bad that they're even being invited to Christmas and Thanksgiving, while I'm being left out in the cold by my parents. And at this point, I don't know what to do. So my parents and I have never had the best relationship. My mom has narcissistic traits, and my dad is her enabler, meaning my brothers and I were always abused by my mom, and my dad did nothing to stop her. Well, within the last 2 years, my mom has gotten worse. I told my friends about it, and they got to see some of her craziness during the last year, and that was just a small amount of what I know is possible. My friends have seen how my mom's behavior has negatively affected me and have helped me to not just take a deep dive into depression. Thus, I thought they would understand how I felt about my parents and people in my life, as well as just generally being around my parents, especially my mom, who is also manipulative. Well, this year I moved out of my parents' house, even though it was a hard thing to do because I wasn't able to or allowed to have a job when living with them, so I honestly had limited resources. My other friends understood the assignment and helped me get on my feet. However, 2 of my friends started hanging out with my parents, and I only found out because one of them sent me pictures of one of the events. I was quite upset and surprised surprised that they would do that when they had been saying that they understood me when I said I wanted to move out and separate myself from my parents the whole time. Well, with advice and encouragement from other friends, I talked to them about getting all close and hunky-dory with my parents. They said they understood, and we came to an agreement. They can still hang out with my parents, but I have to be told about it and stay in the loop. But they also wanted to make sure we were still close friends. Well, they started going to events that they knew I wasn't invited to, such as 4th of July or Thanksgiving, as well as Sunday lunch, stuff like that. And you guessed it, they were sending me pictures of said events. Not being invited by my parents was just them trying to convince people that they did invite me, but I just didn't want to be there, which is just not true. Now, I know we came to an agreement that they can still hang out with my parents, but I feel like they are just being rude and inconsiderate and incredibly disrespectful to me. And yes, I have explained that I find it thoughtless for them to go to these events while they know I wasn't invited. And these are not small events. These are things like Christmas or Thanksgiving or even the 4th of July. These are cornerstone moments that I'm supposed to be sharing with my family, but they're cutting me off. Now, I found out that one of these friends are hosting a graduation party, but I wasn't invited or even told about it by either friend. No, I was told about it by my mom, and it is being held in less than 2 weeks. The only reason my mom told me about it was because she wanted to know if I wanted to ride with her. I feel so hurt by this, but I don't want my emotional state to lead me down the wrong path, so I'm honestly not sure what to do. I have to be honest, the two people you call friends who are actively trying to have some kind of role in your parents' life are not friends in the slightest. Your parents are doing one of two things. They're either making sure that you stay in their toxic web for the rest of your life, or they're using your friends against you, basically trying to make you feel guilty for walking out on them. And I bet you it's probably that second option. Like, why else would they be so enthusiastic to try and bring your friends into their life, if not to try and get back at you and ruin your life in some way, like they've done since you were just a kid? And that's not fair for you in the slightest. So I'm very surprised in the first place that you've even wasted your time with these people. These are not good friends, and they can hardly be called friends in the first place. If anything, they're definitely showing their true colors. So if I was in your shoes, I would almost be tempted to cut these people off as well. They do not deserve to be called your friends if they're going to sympathize with your abusers. So maybe it's time to take some steps to tell them that no, this is not okay. And if they still want to hang out with your parents, then let that be the red flag you were looking for, that these people were never on your side and they're only out to hurt you and to harm you. An entitled Karen refuses to get out of the middle of the road while she's jogging, claiming that people should just go around her, despite the fact that she's not giving anybody any room to go around her. And I honestly have never been more annoyed in my life. Here's what happened. So my fiance and I live in an apartment with a horrible entrance. There are two ways you can get into the parking lot of our apartment. One way is through a hairpin turn, and I mean literally a hairpin tight turn, off of a 45-mile-an-hour road. And the second way is to cut through a neighborhood, which splits you out into the townhouse parking next to my apartment. The road is pretty narrow on the one side, and the entire road is separated by a double yellow line with turn lanes to turn into different cul-de-sacs. The neighborhood also has huge sidewalks that cut through the middle of people's driveways. The road is also full of blind turns and hills, which makes it hard to see if there's oncoming traffic. Many people have gotten into accidents towards the entrance, trying to pass walkers who aren't on the sidewalk. This will be important later. I was coming home from work yesterday when I turned into the neighborhood. A woman, maybe late in her 30s, was jogging in the middle of the road. Yes, you heard that correctly. Smack dab in the middle, not off to the side of the middle or anything like that. I slowed down behind her, and I left about a car's length between me and her. I tried to find a good place to pass her since I couldn't see up the hill or around the bend of the road. The woman began gesturing at me to move over before stopping altogether and banging on the hood of my car, telling me to move over. At this point, I stopped in the middle of the road. She came up to my window and asked me to roll it down. When I rolled my window down, she started shouting at me that I needed to pass her and that I can't drive behind her because she doesn't want cars behind her. I told her I couldn't see if it was safe to pass yet, so I didn't. I also told her to just use the sidewalk that was literally less than a couple of inches away from her. As this interaction went on, about 8 or 9 cars flew down the left side going well over 25 miles an hour. She yelled at me that I don't live here and I don't understand how the neighborhood works, and that apparently nobody uses the sidewalk because it cuts through driveways, as if that has anything to do with anything. I told her if she wasn't going to use the sidewalk, then she's going to have to deal with people slowing down behind her, or that she should just step out of the road and wait till the cars pass to continue jogging. She just gave an an over-exaggerated sigh and said that I was being dumb and childish before walking over to the sidewalk and continuing her stupid jog. She later started complaining about me online, calling me a dumb, selfish teenager who can't drive, stating that the neighbors need a gate to keep the trespassers out. But this stupid entitled Karen doesn't know that I do live here, and hopefully, next time she just uses the sidewalk, because I really don't want to have to deal with her ever again. What an absolute moron. Like, why on earth would she be running in the middle of the road like that? And why would the sidewalks cutting through people's driveways, in any way, shape, or form, be a good enough excuse for you to run and hog the whole road? It sounds like this is a dangerous neighborhood as it is, so the fact that she's just running in the middle of the road, blocking traffic, is basically her asking for trouble. And that's not fair for the drivers that have to put up with that garbage. And worst of all, she really tried to flip this on the driver and make this their problem, instead of just owning up to it and getting out of the way. Like, she got so mad that she was banging on the hood of the car. I mean, what kind of weird entitlement do you have to think you can run through the middle of the road and get away with it? So hopefully, for the sake of the original poster, this crazy Karen doesn't live close by, because otherwise you're gonna have to deal with some weird neighbor who's gonna be all up in your business and making weird, intrusive comments about you and your fiance. My mom's neighbor is being incredibly creepy, leaving flowers for my elderly mom, and all around just being quite weird, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my mom is physically and mentally disabled. She relies on a wheeled walker to get around, but isn't fully stable, and has had falls in the past. She's also schizophrenic, with early stage dementia, hence she's exceptionally vulnerable both physically and mentally. She moved into a new flat about 2 months ago, and one of her upstairs neighbors, a male in his 40s, seems to be taking an unusual interest in her. I've met this guy, and for the sake of privacy, this guy's name is going to be called Bob, and I've only seen him a few times, and he's always seemed overly interested in my mom. He always looks at her intently, and when I've tried to talk to him, he largely ignores me and barely breaks eye contact with her. He stops her every time we happen to see him when we're going out, and seems caught on every word she says, even when it's nonsensical word salad due to her schizophrenia. He's taken in and delivered parcels to her when everyone else just leaves neighbors' stuff on a chair in the communal entrance. He goes out of his way to be nice to her. It's almost like he has a crush on her, but no rational man in his 40s is going to be attracted to an exceptionally vulnerable 70-year-old woman with complex physical and mental care needs. Now, I'm autistic, so I initially put it down to him possibly being on the spectrum, especially as the building was initially sheltered housing. But I feel like even accounting for possible social difficulties, he's a bit too friendly to her. Yesterday, I left my mom's property at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, then returned about 90 minutes later to drop off a prescription, and I found her all flustered and irritable. She told me that Bob had rang her doorbell, steaming drunk, asking to be let in. He claimed he forgot his FOB. Because the flats are so small and closely packed, you can hear when someone rings a neighbor's bell. According to my mom, he didn't try anyone else's bell. He just went straight to hers. Now, he knows that my mom is very physically disabled, so it seems strange that he'd ring her bell. Her 2 other neighbors are in their 40s and physically fit, so why not just ring theirs? I feel like most people would try to avoid bothering an elderly disabled person, and his reason also made no sense to me. Apparently, he'd forgot his FOB, but had his individual door key. You'd keep them together since you always need them as a pair to get in. I could see him forgetting both, but not one. Furthermore, there's 3 key safes outside the flat with spare FOBs for this exact scenario. 3 safes to floor flatmates, making it quite likely, in my opinion, that he would have the code to at least one of them. So he forgot his FOB but not his key, didn't have access to any of the 3 key safes with spare FOBs, and rather than call his immediate and much younger neighbors for assistance, he went straight to the most vulnerable person on the property. Fast forward to 8 o'clock in the morning, and my mom informed me that he's left her a bunch of red carnations in the Christmas wreath that she was hanging on the outside of her door, not on the floor, in the wreath. We're not sure when he did this, but she didn't hear anything last night or this morning, so that makes me think he's crept over in the middle of the night while she and everyone else has been sleeping. No one has curtains on their flat doors because the glass is heavily frosted, but you can still see shadows, lights, and other silhouettes. It makes me uncomfortable that he approached her door in the middle of the night to place flowers on her door. Like I said, he can't really see anything, but it just strikes me as odd. I feel like something's wrong here, and I'm not sure what to do about it. Can anyone advise on what might be going on and what action, if any, I should be taking? I almost feel like he's trying to groom her. I've spoken to my mom about this, and I've explained that his behavior feels off, but she got offended because she liked the the flowers and thinks that they were possibly just an apology for his drunkenness the other night. I honestly can't tell if this is just a potentially autistic individual who isn't aware of the social etiquette of certain things, or if this is something more sinister. How do I approach this? Do I speak to him? Do I inform him of my concerns? My gut is telling me something's wrong, but I have no idea what to do. I think the original poster's gut is right. This really seems sketchy. It could be a situation where he's trying to gain some kind of relationship or a friendship of some kind with your mom, just so he can try and steal her money. So if anything, maybe see if you can try to get through to her, because the way this guy is acting is super sketchy, and I just would not take this lightly if I was in your shoes. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.